Yeah. Oh, I know. Oh, he may just join online.
It's it is. There's something. I'm more
Andy didn't know that he was. So when we take audience comments, they'll be able to, and everybody will be able to hear it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to pass it on.
You know
What I do want to say is we'll speak into the mic because you want that. Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
No.
You zooming?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, he all very good.
Somebody want to push that from the mic?
Test.
When I'm calling you.
Charles is gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with what.
Angel. Kevin Strauss.
Well, see, you weren't downwind.
I got the impression.
And I'm gonna share my, or turn it over to him when you're ready.
Oh, hold on, this camera angle is absolutely.
Yeah, we're kind of way too much. Can you turn the?
It's moving based on who's.
Yeah,
speaking,
based on.
So if I speak over here, it'll come over.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank goodness.
Hey, for high
Called
tech.
technology.
Wait, it's not moving, Greg's talking and it's not moving anymore, Greg thinks.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready?
Right.
Yep, you're good.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Today is April 19th at 6:00 p.m. and we are at the 851 building, Town Hall in Celebration, Florida. This is the joint workshop between the CROA board and the CCDD Board of Supervisors. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have people online, we have people in the audience. That's great to see. So you're going to get like a tag team as we start the meeting because each of us has our own protocol to go through a meeting with. So first I will call the CROA workshop to order. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second
Jim, okay.
Angel, can you do roll for us, please?
All in favor?
Call to order.
All in favor?
With my,
Oh,
okay,
you do yours and we'll do ours. Very good.
okay.
Did you do all in favor?
I will now that I'm talking.
Okay, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then you want to do your call to order? Or do you want me to just?
Angel, can you? Roll.
Craig Filak,
Here.
David Hume,
Here.
Tom Tuzen,
Here.
Beck McLaughlin,
Here.
and I believe we have Cassandra Starks on Zoom.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so you have your quorum, and now we're looking for our quorum. I see Bill Grindle. I see Celia McFadden. I see David Anderson. I'm Cindy Swisher. Charles Richards is online. We have Jared, Jim Hayes and Jared Weiss around the corner. So we have our quorum as well. And was this meeting properly noticed, Lauren? It was properly noticed. Okay. Shall we stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess I'll direct this at both boards. Does anyone have any comments or changes to the agenda? CROA?
No.
Okay. We have a motion to accept the agenda as posted for CROA.
So moved.
Second? Have a second from CROA to accept the agenda?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
You got a motion from CDD?
So move.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jim and Bill. Okay. Audience comments? Anyone? Anybody in the audience have anything to share, ask? Nothing? Online? No? Okay. Moving on to the discussion items. Go ahead, Greg.
Yep, so for three discussion items on here that we had agreed on. The first one was just a general discussion on board alignment and communications. I know on our side, beginning this year, we realigned our liaison roles of the supervisors. The only one we kept as it had been in the past was our CROA liaison. The others we focused
Recording in progress.
functionally or project-based than we did necessarily with a specific entity or a specific organization that way. So for example, Dave's responsible for everything related to incorporations. So whether or not he needs to go talk to the county commissioner or state house or our consultant or anything else, all things incorporation, he's our lead on. For Tom, it's from a maintenance perspective. So anything related field maintenance, sort of daily operations, dealing with a lot of the vendors, the ponds, all that. Tom works a lot with Brett and Russ and our field staff to make sure day-to-day things are going on and improving there. Jack has our CROA role. So that's really the one I just wanted to think is from a communication perspective, see if it's working for both boards as far as how we're liaisoning. I know sometimes it'll be Jack to Jim is the CROA and CDD liaisons. Sometimes things come to myself or Cindy, sometimes it's between staff. So really just kind of a general conversation there. I think, really I'd like kind of from Jack and Jim first. Describe a little bit the frequency of the meetings. Do you think it's working? Do you think the boards are communicating well outside of the meetings? Is there anything we as boards need to consider to be doing better to operate better between the two?
Well, we used to have a monthly meeting between Angel and Lauren and Jim and myself, and we kind of let that slip the last couple of months. So I think the good thing is start doing again since we are getting involved, potentially get involved in situations. So we'll add that, but Jim and I do talk on a frequent basis.
So was Jim, so is Jim, it sounds like you mentioned Jim, was he part of the meeting with you and Lauren and Angel or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the meeting was technically between us, but we wanted the executive director
Gotcha.
there for each the company. And then anyone that they thought they would need to bring in based on what we're gonna talk about.
And in fact, preceding Jim was Brian Kensel and Jackson would usually attend the meetings.
So, I mean, is that, I mean, really think the monthlies is it again? I mean, I just want to make sure.
We'll go back.
Well,
Now, how do Lauren and Angel fit in to this?
well, and again, I mean, discussion, I mean, certainly my view from, and certainly comments from the rest of the group, I mean, my opinion is that really should be 90% of the daily communications between the two organizations. I think from our perspective, be at a staff level, if there are anything from trouble tickets coming in to, hey, we had a problem here, or hey, we got a light out here, or, hey, can your staff help with this? I think that's, again, from our perspective, that's where we got out of, we had one liaison who was working with the sheriff's department on assigning details and really getting into some management roles. So we as a board have tried to come back from that to enable them to, okay, what resources do you need in order to do the daily operations? So from our side, I mean, Angel, any color you want to add there, but we're trying to best enable her and her staff to do what we hired her to do.
Originally, when we started these meetings, it was essentially to get Grand Manor, when they had first started, was when we used to meet and kind of help them as far as Russ and Brett with the field portion of it, whose entity it goes to. That's kind of what it started as. And then we kind of progressed into some other things, and then they kind of just tapered off. So that was the intent when we first started, was just to kind of help each other identify what's part of each entity and how we can help. And then, like I said, they kind of tapered off a little bit.
So do you think it's worth it to go back to where you're having a monthly meeting?
It was monthly,
Yeah, we definitely want to do that. I'm wondering if we want to have like a weekly stand-up call between the executive directors.
I don't know if that's necessary, because I know Brian Sanchees, our ops manager, and Russ and Brett are in day-to-day contact.
Yeah, they are all the time.
Yeah, I don't know about we.
Yeah, they see each other out in the field every day, and I see at least one email between the three of them every day, and I know they're regularly texting.
Are you, Angel, are you copied on every email that goes from your place to ours? Because I know Lauren has her staff copying her on everything that goes out.
If I'm not copied on it, if it comes from this end and I'm not copied, they forward me. So I eventually get put into the loop, if not from the very beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So we're good?
Yeah, unless anybody else, like I said, has any other general comments about it. Okay.
Is it, I have one more, I guess. So the monthly meeting that you're going to resume, correct? Is that a set day or is it, I mean, is it like the third Wednesday of the month or?
It was.
We were trying to
originally,
do
but
that,
then
yeah, but
When it was originally based on Brian and Jack's schedule, and then when Jim became the liaison, the meetings kind of got switched around, and I think that's part of the reason why I changed it off.
due to my employment.
You were.
Has that changed? And I'm just
No, I'm
wondering.
still the lawyer.
No, I just mean that I'm wondering if there was a set day and you had to reschedule, if that would work better than just
Yeah,
kind of floating from month to
I
month.
think what we were doing last year was when we saw there was a conflict with the standard, whatever, second Tuesday or whatever it was. Then we moved it like a week before or something.
Yeah.
To one that would work. And so I think we'll go back to that.
Okay, so you're gonna pick a day and then cancel as needed or adjust as needed or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it'd be a big help if at least gets on the calendar every month for a certain day and then you can rearrange it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good.
That's how it was.
Mhm. Good.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Is there a need for a written report out after those monthly meetings to all respective board members?
So we
I
get it.
don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, Jack comes for our regular CDD meetings. If there is something of substance, he will give us a written report as part of the supervisor comments that goes into our docket. More often than not, it's usually just verbal stuff, which is not huge. So I mean, I think from our perspective, I don't see any, again, just.
Yeah.
David, is that something you would like me to do?
I'm just raising a question.
I'd be happy to do it.
I'll say that I would, as the liaison on our side, to just recap.
I think as we move forward, we probably will have a lot more to discuss.
Yeah,
Commonality, especially with Island Village and Sheriff's
Right.
Farm and stuff like that.
Okay.
I think
So
to answer your question, I think it would be a good idea if we don't attend or watch or read the minutes of a meeting, and also it comes in more timely, in a timely way. So if there's anything that's a trigger,
yes,
I think it could be helpful.
okay, be glad to do
And I
that.
think we're doing that already with some of our other
Yeah, I noticed that this year.
committee liaisons, and that's very helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
So not to put a burden.
It's not a burden on me.
Okay, great. Okay,
All right.
yeah, yes.
Any comments or questions on that? So the second one that's on here, the second item, taking a look at the cell service review. So I'll maybe start with this one. We had been bringing up on the CDD side, really since I got on the board back in late 20, early 21. Know there had been discussions for a while about, is the current Acela tool kind of getting past its life. I know Brian Kenzel and Vanessa and a few others had said, hey, yeah, we're thinking that maybe this isn't the right fit for us anymore. And I guess there were conversations. I know Vanessa had told me that the software company was not doing any more significant updates, and just kind of the general commentary there was maybe we're hitting end of life for this for the community. Understanding priorities and all that hadn't bubbled back up, but it did start to on our side. As we as a board started, be gentle and use the word demanding, but asking for more reports and some more details, especially as it feeds into our budget from our staff. One of the challenges we've had is taking that data from what we're seeing from the field reports in a consistent manner to be able to turn that into board level decisions and discussions. I know Angel's mentioned and the staff has mentioned over time, there's been issues, and it's not a personnel issue. I think a lot of it's the fault of the tool where things are getting closed improperly or getting routed right, things like that seems to be a regular issue on our end because we're not the owner of the tool. We are the recipient of those as those get filtered down to us being hosted and being yours, which I will say to begin with, thank you for whatever it's been, I think now 8 years that we have been a recipient on that. And I think it is probably the number one thing in my mind that helps break down the alphabet soup barriers for the community, because most of the stuff that day to day that a resident's going to have are going to be things that a tool like CellService can and should be addressing, and to a large part has been addressing. So I do think it's absolutely crucial that we do continue to row together in whatever tool we end up using. That being said, more and more as I dug into it with staff over the first few months that I was on the board, it became apparent that our operation had outgrown what the capability of the current cells we've gotten to. So we started those discussions. I know about 6 months ago, I raised it with Jim in one of our meetings and said, hey, I understand you guys just have a lot of priorities, a lot of other things you're dealing with. I had engaged before Jim was on as the board from the technology committee perspective. Here, there's some options you guys have already looked at. We're happy to pick up the ball and kind of take the lead on the research and then come back and help facilitate this a little bit. He had given me a few. We had some discussions around that, and again, it kind of ebbed and flowed. Got to a point a few months ago where that's why I raised at one of our meetings, I think back in January, said, hey, let's go ahead and just take the lead on it and try to get some analysis done and see what's out there in the marketplace so we can bring it back to the group. So started that January timeframe. Angel, do you want to talk a little bit just kind of on the research you've done, and then I can go a little bit on the history and some of the slides here, just how we got to where we did on the selections?
Yes, so with the board's direction, we researched some different platforms that were comparable to CellService, basically what you already had in place that would fit the need. There's a lot of work order systems out there, but a lot of those work order systems don't allow residents to put in tickets and track them from start to finish, like I think the intent of CellService is. So I had a couple of calls with some different platforms. It wasn't conducive to what everyone was looking for. And again, I based that off of CellService. And the one we came back with was GoGov. That was the closest and the price point that did all the services, and it actually does more than what we're currently using with CellService.
So, some of my slides here, and I put together just a couple in the packet on the page of Cell software. So I want to make sure we're separating the nomenclature of CellService. CellService is basically a white label branding that the town has put on a different software platform, the Acela platform. So the idea here is, really from a community perspective, it should be transparent. It's still going to be CellService. It's still going to be logoed and labeled that way if we make a change, but differentiating between the platforms. So, I went through some of the history, and I actually talked with had a 45-minute conversation with Eric Oppegard. I know he had led this many years ago when he was on the board, just kind of how they got to where they got to. So some interesting history there that I tried to sum up, but just going for the history of this being implemented in 2015, I think the contract was finally signed in 2016. Really being, as Angel mentioned, a ticketing-based system for trouble ticketing. Certainly, understand it's being paid for and administered by CROA to date, but that we're on there as an additional users. I think CROA is, and possibly Lexington. I'm not sure if we are or not, but I realize that no, okay. That it has been intended to cover the entire town enterprise as well. And then, as I mentioned here at the bottom, just some of the history bullets of how we got to where we're at in the past 6 or 12 months. So the next two slides on here for GoGov in particular. So we do have a GoGov rep on the line. So I'm going to steal some of his thunder, but not try to steal all of it. We did a call with him back in February, and Lauren was on. We had a few members from our board. Angel was there as well. Hopefully you all got a chance to see it. It was about an hour, 10 hour, 15 minutes, where he went through kind of a full end-to-end, not only demo of the software, but the costing and how the business model works. So I listed in here, I'm not going to go through sort of line by line. You can read through those. Hopefully you had a chance to. I really tried to pull out what I saw as features and benefits from the GoGov platform that are not things we have at all today with the Acela, or things that we do have, but don't think they work to the level that, at least on our side, that we need them to. So I do think that there are a lot of added features that will help us do better financial management. I think there is a lot better interface for the community. It's more modern in how the app works and the ins and outs. And again, I'll leave that to Kevin, who's on the line here, to go through some demonstration of that. And that's just on the trouble ticketing side. One of the things I was really interested in, and I think will help reduce a lot of the errors, is there's an automated interface that will go directly with the county GIS system. So when somebody tags a light pole in a particular plot, the software can actually pull out of the county GIS exactly who owns that plot, and it'll route automatically to that organization. So where the staff doesn't have to go back anywhere and start going through the lexicon of who owns what, where, and parsing things out. The system should do that automatically. The other aspect of it on the next slide is the community communications piece. The ability for the GoGov tool to do more than just the ticketing. As people download, it's like everybody's got apps on their phones today. This will be an additional app. It'll do automatic pushes. You can do email blasts. You can one-way notices, alerts. Hey, there's a road closure. The county's coming. There's a water main break, whatever. All those things are in a format that people normally interact with today through the app world, if you will, that I think will help improve some of the communications. I know certainly on our end, obviously we just got a Facebook page up and running about 6 months ago, trying to catch up with the times. This will automatically interact with social media, so you can do your social media, and it's not just Facebook. If you've got Instagram or any of the other common ones out there, we do those interactions automatically. But the nice thing is, because it's all in one platform, that data then comes exporting the other elements of the ticketing system and everything else that go along with it. So it also allows you, this would probably be more for you than it would be for us, ability to connect to partners. So as you look at, one of the things I had in mind was, have your partner programs from Parks and Rec. If they've got web pages or other apps, you can connect, hey, our football partners are X, our tennis partners are Y. That you can go, somebody from the community can go into the app and start tagging those and saying, okay, I want to go see partners for football, and they'll automatically go to that web page, or for tennis, and go to that web page. So that way they're not having to track those down through external web pages. It's all coming through the seller service app, able to connect in. And then it also will interface with existing websites. So a big one for us, obviously, being a public board, that we have to have notices up and record retention and all that. You can have it in the format of an app with buttons, but whether you want to get governing documents or meeting notices or anything else, you can do it in an app format that will automatically tie back to your website. So you're not having to store stuff twice. You keep it monitored or keep it stored on your website as you normally would. And then the app just flows in and connects to the existing infrastructure. So I'm going to say the implementation slide for the end, because I think that's kind of a summary piece, but let me just pause there before we kick it over to Kevin, just kind of at a high level before we go into his demo. Any additional questions or comments at that point?
Do we have anything that could come on the screen so we could see what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what he's gonna,
Okay.
when we have Kevin come on, he's gonna do something.
Before we go there, I have some broad questions to put Lauren on the spot.
Yes.
All right. 4 broad questions. From seller service, how many tickets approximately do we get on a weekly or monthly basis? Approximately. How many are we dealing with? 10, 20, 50, 100?
Doing that for your.
And then within that, how many are CROA? How many are CDD? Because I know seller services is designed to make it easy for the resident. Easy for the resident, don't have to worry about who's doing what. So how many are roughly? I mean, is it 3/4 CROA? Is it 3/4 CDD?
So from February 1 to March 15, CROA got 93 and CCDD got 120
Through,
through seller service.
okay. Okay, and so that's for a 6 weeks period. That's pretty average. Okay, so those are 2 of the 4 questions. Third, what other sources of input for resident, I want the light fixed, are outside of seller service? Someone comes to the desk, someone calls, someone sends an email to you all, same question there. So approximately how many get added? Approximately?
I couldn't even tell you.
I mean,
we
is
had
that
600.
No, this is all helpful.
And one of the, as she's looking that up, one of the nice features I know Kevin will show you it's, if somebody wants to enter the data through, from a resident perspective, if they want to enter the data through an app, they can do that.
Right.
There's also an email interface, so if they email an automated, they'll actually translate that data and put it in there as opposed to staff having to do that. It should do that automatically.
So
Ballpark,
last month, we had 858 people here in person that were assisted, but those could be maintenance related or unrelated. We had 612 calls coming into town hall and 1,943 emails that were responded
how
to.
many?
1,943 emails.
So
Those could or could not be maintenance related, but that's the.
Are the numbers that you quoted initially, does that include everything input through cell service and everything input from a interaction with a resident?
So the cell service was the 93 and the 120.
Right.
This
Okay.
is
All encompassing.
in-person foot traffic in town hall was 858 residents.
But don't you put some of those, right, if they come in and,
We don't put those in the cell service.
oh, okay.
okay, so
We have
that,
an internal ticketing system.
so then something that Greg mentioned triggered this is, does CROA have, sorry, I don't know this, I know it was proposed 3 or 4 years ago, a workflow system, a maintenance workflow software system.
We have an internal IT ticketing system and an internal maintenance that Jose just developed.
So we have our, CROA has its own tracking system. When you want to refurbish a bench or you want to repair this or that,
Yeah,
that's part of a,
as any of us drive through the community or we get calls from residents, all the staff now are putting this into the facility ticketing system that's separate from cell service.
and then you all prioritize that. We'll paint this bathroom when we get to it. Or this is more of an urgent repair. The toilet doesn't work. Okay.
But
That's all helpful.
just a question on that, but that's internal, that's not if you're a resident, you can't input any information into that.
Not yet.
I had 2 questions. On the GPS, if I'm standing next to a tree that's fallen down, I just enter it and it's going to locate where the work needs to be done.
I believe it, probably a better question for Kevin. I believe it's
Okay.
like cell service today where it's like a manual pin drop. I think you can do either if I remember right, where you can either do it as, hey, I turn my GPS on and it automatically finds me, or I can just drag the menu around.
Because I could also see the tree down,
Right.
drive home and call it in.
Yes.
And they shouldn't show up at my house because that's not where the tree is.
Correct.
But the way to get them.
Were we talking about integration with the county though, to automatically look up?
GIS.
Yeah, so what, and I asked Kevin at length about this, so again, he'll get into it, but it's not a single data dump where we get from the county and then we just post that. It's a live connection with their GIS system. So as you go to like Island Village is a perfect example where lot ownership is changing. That's an automatic interface that continues to happen. Now it's no longer Mattaby, now all of a sudden CDD owns this and it'll
One more question, at least one. Is it possible there's a matrix? In other words, this is what one does, this is what the other does, and then we can see what the benefits are comparing the two to each other, because I'm not familiar with this explains what GoGov does. I don't know exactly what a seller's strengths and weaknesses are.
I mean,
If it's a comparison, that would be helpful.
we could, I just know cell service just because of using it as a resident and I'm not trying to bash it, but there's just not a lot that it does. You input a ticket, you get the ticket out. I mean, really the complexities I've seen with the Acela tool is on the back end. It's not really on the interface end, because really right now as a community, we're not using it for anything more than a ticketing system. We're not pushing community notices. We're not doing any of this stuff. I mean, it's resident puts it in, picks the type of issue and it sends out and comes in.
CROA uses it for notifications,
Yeah.
but that's, it's a pain in the patootie to do.
I would say, because I've never seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it, but yeah, I can tell, and
And you're limited in characters and what it says.
well, and then from the user experience, you get the notification plus the other 150 that came after it. It's from a customer standpoint, there's challenges, because when you do enter stuff, it's great once you go ahead and enter it. Problem is when you're retrieving it, go ahead and send you an email, and you click on a link and see another interface, like when it says, we have an update on your status. It brings you to another page where you're like, what is this? And you kind of have to search for that information, then that will ticket frame. But that's if it actually gets the right entity. Because sometimes if there's a mix up and not getting to the right entity, it'll go ahead and just say, hey, your issue's closed, it's been resolved. And you're like, no, it hasn't. And that's been going on for a while. So it's a hit or miss. Again, it worked when this was put together was great because it really solved a lot of issues. But we're now how many years? It's 8 years and there's better stuff from a customer service perspective.
Lauren, can you confirm that it is basically just in maintenance mode?
It is in maintenance mode.
Okay.
Kevin, you want to go ahead? Are you online? Can you hear us?
Could I ask a question?
He is, and he's on, and that's his screen. Kevin, can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I thought someone else had a question. I was letting that
I have
person
to
go first.
unmute yourself.
I am unmuted.
Kevin?
Hello.
He
Testing.
is talking.
Looks like he's
We
talking.
can't hear him. Do we have a speaker?
Angel, are
Yeah,
your speakers
speakers.
muted on your computer because that'll control the volume on the light size?
Testing.
We can hear them online.
No, they're up.
Do you folks take questions during your presentations or do you wait by segment? Because there's someone in the audience who wants to ask.
We really haven't set up. If we can.
Can you wait until we get done with the segment maybe?
Oh, it was a question for the calendar.
Oh, okay, then.
Well, wait till it gets.
Yes, when do we get them on?
Sure.
Testing. Hello. Oh. Testing 1 2.
Still can't hear you.
Hang on.
I said, hold on. Stand by.
Hello. How about now? Testing.
I can hear him on Zoom.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
It just
good.
seems like those in the room can't hear you.
Can they hear you?
I don't know. Can y'all? Angel, can you hear me?
We hear you online, yes.
They can hear on Zoom, but they can't.
Yeah, they hear him online.
The problem
There you
is
go.
not there.
Now
Kevin,
try
can you
talking.
talk now?
Hello. Testing.
104.
How about somebody just log into Zoom on their phone and we could hear it through the phone and here. Speakers. This one's on.
Hello. Testing.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Through here.
But it's through her speakers.
That's fine. Let's just do
Yeah,
that.
we can put the microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could hear. Everyone could hear.
Yes.
All right. And thank you, Greg, for teeing that up. So yeah, we'll run through it. This is a replacement for your current seller service app. It's something in the same realm, but we feel like with a bunch of enhanced capability. And really, with this, there are 3 main components. You have the branded mobile app for the residents. If you'd like, there's a portal for your website if you want residents to be able to submit requests through there. And then there's also the staff-facing software where we're going to track and manage all the work, and we could do like time and material tracking and reporting and all sorts of stuff going on back there. So, the resident-facing piece, we would replace the branded seller service app. Your app would look something like this. For an example, here's a couple we do in Florida. This is the city of Sanford. They call their app Sanford Connects. This is the city of Oakland Park. They call their app Tel OP. And kind of the benefit for me as a resident, I would download this because number one, there's kind of 3 main reasons. Number one, I can get all sorts of useful, we'll call it district or community information with these buttons in the app, and these are called applets. And this is your ability to really create like a boiled down user experience and point folks to some of that more useful information that we think people want one tab access to. And in terms of like what makes the cut for something to become one of these buttons, the source of information for these buttons, it comes from either existing web pages. So Greg, you threw out a few examples earlier, websites you guys are affiliated with or information right off the CCDD website. Like for example, this customer here button, it says pay utility bill, just goes right to the web page where they have their utility billing. This is not something we provide for them. It's just a nice quick shortcut for the residents. So we're able to take essentially any web page and pull it out and make it readily available with one of these buttons. Secondarily, from our software, you could do a few things, like if you wanted to do like a directory of phone numbers that are click to dial, or you wanted to highlight who the current board members on both the CROA and the CDD, you could do stuff like that with like names, pictures, bios, contact info, or even physical locations in the community. So like if you have parks or walking trails or different community buildings, I could see not only a listing of them, but I could even see where in the community they are and pick one and get like a picture, description of services, hours, location. So if nothing else, if I'm a resident, if I download this app, it's going to be a really quick, easy way for me to access, some of that more useful community related information. So that's kind of like reason one why I would download it. Reason two why I might download it is to receive all sorts of community alerts and updates. This is the idea that, hey, we as like the folks that run in the community want to push information out in bulk to the people that live here. And you can literally send anything you want. And we see a wide variety of stuff that goes through here. So just some real life examples. There's like road construction, there's a power outage, cardboard pickup is tomorrow, there's a scheduled council or commission meeting, community events. These are all things we see go through there. And the creating and sending of that on the staff side is really easy. So for the folks that you want to give access to the software to send mass notifications out, they'll have access to the staff system, which is completely web-based, right? So it runs right out of a browser. You can access it from anywhere. And writing up a new message is basically like writing an email, but we do break it into kind of three main pieces so you get something very thorough. The first thing.
Couple questions. Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
He's zooming through this.
Yeah. Actually, I have a couple questions. One is, are you able to send emails out and send the notifications off of the same message? And is what format is the message in? Are you able to insert images and bold text and things like that?
The answer to those is yes, and I'm actually literally about to show you where it goes, what it looks like, and draft up a message here so you can see exactly how it works.
Thank you.
Celia,
Other
did you have
questions?
No, I'm trying to understand him. He's
Yeah.
spoken very
Can you
fast.
speak?
Well, and because of this, the way we're transmitting it, it's,
Yeah.
Kevin,
if you can maybe slow down just because we're doing microphone to speaker here, it's just a little bit hard hearing you. If you could just slow down a little bit.
Sure, no problem.
I have a question before you go on. So in this system is, I understand there's like a map. So if I'm someplace in town and I say playground, will it show me where the nearest playground is and then kind of direct me? Did I understand that correctly or no?
It's not exactly like that. The idea is like you as the community, if you have physical locations that you want to highlight, you can create buttons for them. So for example, this community has a lot of parks and a lot of walking trails. So they've created a button for each one. So like when I click on the trails, for example, I can see a listing of them. But if I'd like, I could also see the same listing represented visually on a map with pins.
Okay.
And then if I have an idea of where I am, like, oh, I'm near this one, I could pick it and it tells me a bit of information about this location.
So it doesn't GPS locate you and show.
Yeah. So are you able to turn on, if you give permission, can you have a GPS of the device? So as Cindy was requesting, you would see where you are at and where the nearest things are, both?
Not currently.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so the sending out of the kind of bulk notifications, this is what it would look like to write one of these up. And it's pretty straightforward. So the first thing here is a headline, like what is it that we're announcing? So for an example, I'm going to do a road closure. So my headline is going to be road closure, expect delays. Then we've got a tagline, which is just a brief little summary of the message. So to me, a good summary for this one is which roads are closed and what days are they closed on. You're going to see in just a minute, the resident at one point will get a little preview of the message made up of the headline and tagline together. And on that preview, there's going to be a dismiss button. Like, okay, I understand. I don't really need to see any more. And a view button. Like, yes, I'd like to see more detail. And the more detail will go here in the body of the message. And because of the way that we deliver these, there are no character limits and there's really no formatting limitations. So inside the message, I could do different sized headings, bulleted lists, numbered lists, images, links to other websites. So maybe for this one, I want to go ahead and throw in like a little screenshot of a map. By the way, as I'm typing, if you look here on the right side of your screen, you'll see a little preview so that you can get an idea of what this will look like for your customer. Make sure you're comfortable with that before you send it. And I can even link back to other websites. So maybe it makes sense to link back to the county's website or, the CCDD website or the CROA website or, somewhere for some more information. Now, once you have this set, you can either send it out immediately or pre-schedule this to send at a later date and time. And then we're able to take this one message. And right now there's potentially 4 places to which it can go. So the first one is push alert, meaning anyone that has the CellService app on their device, Apple or Android, will receive this message in a real-time push. The second is going to be email. So if you have an existing email list, we would be able to import that for you if you'd like. And then to garner more addresses going forward, we can give you a little widget that you could throw on a website that would allow residents to add themselves to the list. And then we also do share to Facebook and share to Twitter. I think I overheard before we just launched a Facebook page, so we'll send it there. So for right now, we'll go push alert, email, and Facebook. So I'm going to hit send, and let's take a look at how this comes out. So the first one would be the...
Real quick, can you send it to multiple Facebook locations?
Kind of. Let me show you exactly how it works. I'll show you. Essentially, you'll be able to take that message and put it where you'd like. It's like a semi-automated push. I'm going to show you here in a sec how you could accomplish multiple pages if you needed.
Okay, thank you.
So the first one is the phone. I'm going about my day. I've got your app on my device. I see what would be your app name, your app icon pops up here on my phone. In this example, telling me there's a road closure. So I go ahead and tap on the push alert. It would open the CellService app, shows me this little preview of the message. On here, there's a dismiss button and a view button. So I'm going to hit view, and here's an example of what this would come out looking like for me as a resident here inside the phone. So that is our first channel, is the push alert. The second one is email. So if I was someone that had my email address on the list, I got this exact message in an email, would look something like this. And then lastly was the sharing to Facebook. And to your question, sir, this is like a semi-automated process. The way it works right now is when I hit send, it opened a Facebook tab in my browser. You know, I'm signed in through whatever account I was last signed in on this machine. It opened up a post in there, and it just takes pastes a link for me to a web-based version of the message into the post to where I give it a little bit of context. So I'm just going to say road closure and hit the post button. So what this is going to look like for the resident is if I'm on Facebook and I follow, you know, the CellService page, I'm going to see here you guys have made a post. This would, you know, be your account, and there's a link in here. And when I click the link, it gives me a publicly shareable, publicly accessible version of this message, viewable for anyone that has access to a web browser and an internet connection. So if you did want to share this to a different Facebook page, sir, right out of our software, you can grab this link and you'll be able to paste this into a post on whatever Facebook account that you'd like.
Okay, the reason I ask is because we aren't one entity, we're bifurcated at least.
Well, so Kevin, can you maybe pause for a second and just talk about, we had talked in the call in February, CDD would be the master owner, if you will, of the account, but CROA would have its own sub-account. So you're getting your own tickets, your own Facebook page, your email list, everything else. So it's self-contained within you that you run it as an organization, and we would have the same, Canoa could have the same, Enterprise could have the same, so that you're all managing, because your email distro list is different than ours,
Right.
and that kind of stuff. So Kevin, can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Well, for that, what you would have is we have the concept of subscription groups, which is your ability to create a few different like lists or groups. So residents can subscribe to whichever ones that they would like. So, you know, if I didn't want to get everything that's going out and I only wanted CROA, if you had a list called CROA, as a resident, I would be able to go ahead and say, I only want things that fit in that category. And the way that you would do that when you're sending it is that when we went to send out the message, there is a field here called subscription groups. So if like CROA was one, I could pick that and it would only go to people subscribed to that group.
So the residents would have to subscribe to all these entities.
Well,
Right?
they're only,
So-
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So if there is a problem on CDD property, they'd have to subscribe to CDD. CROA, Canoa,
No.
Lexington.
No,
No.
this is for push notifications only.
So
It
it's,
isn't for incoming requests.
This isn't for the tickets. This is gonna be like, hey, if I as a resident, if I want to get notices, if I only care about what CROA is doing.
oh, it's for
I want
us,
to get for the organization to push to the community.
okay, but it's not for us to,
If they don't care what's going on with enterprises, they don't subscribe to enterprises, they only subscribe to CROAs.
okay. Thanks.
And we can have multiple ones, like we're sending out the emails now. You can have the Monday one and the Friday flash. What do we call the Monday one? Oh, yeah, it does. Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Sure. A matter of privacy. CDD must disclose anything that comes into them as a matter of public record. Person who's sending it, the basis of what they send. If someone were to send in a request to CROA about their personal finances that's going through this centralized device, how will that be segregated so those records do not become subject to public disclosure because they're coming through CDD entity?
Why would they be sending in information about it?
Because you'll be the only thing left. People currently send things on cell service about their payments, you know,
No.
their scheduling.
No,
I have,
why would
and
you
I've
do
been
that?
directed to do that.
Service? Serenade.
You didn't mention Serenet, but Serenet, when you call them, says you can do that by cell service. Often when you send it just through Serenet, you get no response of any kind. So your options they give you are to either call and talk to a human being or use cell service.
I mean, this would only be, the only thing residents be inputting in here is like truck, like just light out or tree fall or something like
Well,
that.
that's what you anticipate, but the rest of the world doesn't know those rules. They may have any question. It's maybe more person.
The system doesn't have an interface. There's not an interface to say, hey, send a question. It's enter a trouble ticket. Do you have a light up?
Well, there's a trouble ticket when you, let's say you wanted to complain about a covenant violation. And in the context of CROA now, the person who makes that complaint is not revealed. Okay, but if the person who's been complained about wants to know and it's come through a public record format like.
Then it would be a public record.
Sure, so you eliminate the privacy of those kinds of comments.
Then send covenants violations directly to CROA, like they can tell you to do. Email it directly to them, so it's private.
Well, so then you're really just overriding a system that exists. The new system that you can't use for the same purposes.
So Kevin, can you keep going? So Kevin, I have one more question. So just to be clear, the subscriptions are the ones that can be when, can you have multiple administrators and are all the users under the same, group?
Are we talking about on the staff side of things now, sir, or for the residents? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
the
I'm trying to
staff
follow.
side, yes. Yes,
They
yeah, the
are
staff
all-
side.
They are all under the same roof. Okay, so this would all be this, you'd log into the same site. Everyone will have their own username and password, but it is a rights or permissions-based system. So as we get into the request part of this, when you look at, hey, what types of issues does each board handle? You can make it so that if you'd like, all the ones that CRA handles are only seen by folks that are deemed in the CROA account versus, you know, the ones that the CDD handles could only be seen if you'd like by the folks for the CDD. You have to
Yeah.
take these.
How's that configured again?
How is it configured?
Yeah, how do you configure it? Because that would be probably how we would do it.
Oh, we do it based on your feedback. It might make more sense as we go through, but when we set up different users in the system, you have to understand these systems were designed to be used by cities, towns, counties, small and very large. So in like, say, for example, a large sized city or the county that you live in, the departments might even know the names of the people that work there. These are large places, right? So the system's designed to be segmented off essentially. So when we look at managing users, when we add users to the system, every staff user needs to belong to some sort of department. And by belonging to a department, in this case, CROA or CDD, we get a set of permissions related to the tickets that department manages. But the system is very configurable. So we can make a lot of small little nodes and exceptions where appropriate, because maybe I mostly do that department, but I actually do pitch in on this one type of issue that the CDD handles. So you're going to give me access to just that one issue. So we can get very granular in the way that we set the permissions up.
For us. So we want to segregate it, and I also ask, can each group have their own admin?
Yes, there are 3 levels of user. You have an overall system administrator, what you call a department admin, and a user. So what you're referring to would be what's called a department admin.
Got it.
Does that kind of help? Maybe we should start with that. As far as
Yeah, because I think the question, that was a better answer to the question of how we can segregate, right? As opposed to the subscriptions, which is kind of a notification process, right?
Residents,
Well,
correct.
Yeah.
if I may, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't mean to confuse things starting off with the notifications. That's almost something you don't have currently. That's an enhancement. That is the other way. This is a pushing of information to everyone. And the general idea there is, as a resident of the community, most likely I want to know about all of these things regardless of which agency is sending it. So you could think of that as almost like a digital version of reading the newspaper. What the subscription groups allow you to do is to say, you know what? I don't like the sports section. Like, yeah, by default, I got the whole newspaper, but I don't like the sports section. I'm only interested in world news and weather. And that's the idea of the subscription groups. The subscriptions have nothing to do with your staff or as a resident with submitting a report or a concern. These are just for mass updates that you might send out.
Right, so,
So I think for you guys, as an example,
yeah,
you can have the master CROA one, but then if you have people who want to know about, hey, Parks and Rec activities versus.
They do that.
right, but
Yeah.
is he aware that you guys have a different audience than we do?
Yeah.
Okay, and we're a subset of the
Right.
audience that you have, okay.
That's why you have different users.
Yeah.
And they can go ahead and handle these things differently.
Got it, okay.
So this
It
is,
might be beneficial to let him finish his presentation and then take questions.
Well.
I mean, I wanted to set the stage because the segregation of the organizations, I know is a part of this presentation because we're a little bit different than I think the rest of his customers.
Yeah.
That's important up front.
I wasn't understanding when he said, we don't have this yet. What don't they have yet? GPS.
No.
Individual device GPS, so when you go into a map, you can see where all the parks are, but you won't see where you are in their app.
But is this like Sally where if I'm walking and
Yeah,
a
if you take
branch
a
is on
picture,
one of the trail, it'll automatically.
it'll read the GPS from it,
Okay.
yes.
We haven't even gotten into the function of the submitting an issue yet. These are just some additional things that maybe we're going to add that aren't included in the current Sell a Service app that we've reviewed so far.
All right, so let's Kevin, sorry, let's keep rolling on the push notification piece and then we can get into the ticketing part.
Oh, we're done with the push. We went through everything. That's it.
All right, let me pause there specifically to, just so we're kind of breaking up the conversation, specifically to kind of the push notifications, the one-way notifications from the organizations to the community. Any questions there, or thoughts or concerns?
I think so.
No? Okay. Go ahead, Kevin, sorry.
Excuse me, Cynthia, had your section come up yet? I saw you kind of waving your hand, or you're good.
Oh, no, I had a couple questions, but the one, when you were talking about the GPS, I don't understand why it can't tell us on the map where you are, like where the nearest park is, but it can tell us where the tree branch fell. And that's saying, isn't that the same GPS?
No, it's reading it from the picture. And the second one, it's not reading it from the device itself.
Well, let's go through the ticketing one.
There you go. Okay.
Continue, Kevin.
A good example of the thing we just went through. You have all these cut people in the community have this app for reporting issues. And you guys are about to throw a big July 4th event for the community. There's going to be vendors with ice cream and all sorts of fun stuff for the kids. That's an example of something you would use what we just went over for. Hey, all these people have their phone, they have the app through there. Let's let them know this thing is going on. That's the idea behind what we just went through. Okay. All right, now the reporting of an issue. That's this giant start request button that we see here at the top of the screen. And similar to what you have now, when I hit that, what I'm going to see here are a listing of types of issues that you as an organization make available for the residents to report. So these are specific issue types. I heard a gentleman earlier asking about like, some sort of reporting of something. I didn't catch the specific words, but to Greg's point, the only things I see here are what you make available. So if there is no general, you'd have to be reporting that under, like a broken tree limb, right? So these things are going to be defined. So you are getting the things through this system that are designed to come through this system. So if I wanted to report a pothole, I could do that. If I wanted to report tall grass, whatever your topics happen to be. And it's a very simple two-step process. Step one, do we have any pictures? I could say no. I could open the camera and start snapping. More commonly, what we see is you've already taken the photo. Like this gentleman, Angel, I believe you mentioned earlier. I'm walking around, I see a broken tree, I take a picture, and then I go home to report it. So what I'll do is grab the pictures I just took out of my camera roll, and what our app does is actually pulls the location right off of the photo and goes, that's where this issue is located. So I don't even have to drag and drop the pin. The reason we have this feature is exactly the example that one of the gentlemen gave is what used to happen. Then I would report it and forget to change the location. I'd report a down tree in the middle of my living room on accident. So it avoids all of that. Now, if for some reason their photo didn't have a location on it, we'll show them this map, starting with their current location where they could drag and drop the pin or type in the address to indicate where the issue is. We could do a boundary for you, so you only get requests from within your service area. And then, as Greg was mentioning before, we're going to be integrated with the county's GIS system. And what that's going to do is once we have an address here, it'll check it against there and see, like, is this a road that's managed by XYZ agency, or is it a different agency? And those, anything that they have defined in that GIS is we could leverage to make sure we route this to the correct people that need to be able to fix it. Okay. You can ask them whatever type of things you want on a topic specific basis. So what we ask a resident when they report tall grass might be different than what we ask when they report a pothole. Everything is topic specific. Same goes for the resident's contact information. It is up to you if you want to require them to provide, like a name and an email, or if you want to make it optional and allow them to do the submission anonymously. That is also configurable on a per topic basis. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. It thanks me for my submission. It lets me track the status of my request. What I see here is not a list of everything that's open in the community currently, but just my personal service history. So these are all the things I've submitted in the past. Here's the tall grass complaint we just put in, currently in an open status. This will get updated and changed over the next couple of minutes as this ultimately gets worked from start to finish on the staff side of things. Okay. All right. If you would like, there can be a second resident-facing piece for this that can live on your website. So if you wanted folks to be able to put requests in through your site, we can give you something called an iframe. And you might have a button here that says, like, how do I report a concern or whatever you wanted to call it. And like when I click on services, like instead of seeing like just some text, I could see something that looks like this. And the whole purpose of this, if you'd like, is so that even if you don't have the app, but you did go to one of your websites, you'd be able to make a request submission through there as well. It'll put the most requested down the right-hand side based on what people are actually asking for. And this is what it would look like to put one in through there. It's very similar to what we did on the phone. We can see the map, with the boundary here. I could type in the address. I could go ahead and drag and drop the pin, whatever I prefer, upload my photo, type in my questions, and hit submit. So this is an option. You don't have to do this. I notice you don't have the Excel report on there currently, but if you did want to put this up there, that would be totally up to you.
So if I'm trying to understand, when you went back into your camera roll, you went and you popped up a picture, and am I understanding that this device will know where that picture is?
Yes, ma'am. When you on your device,
for instance, right now, there's something on Sully showing a pothole in the road with a drain. How does it know where that pothole is in the road?
So let's say, ma'am, you were taking a nice evening walk and you saw that pothole, and you said,
Right.
I'm going to you take a picture of it, right?
And I go home.
And then you go home.
Right.
In your phone, all the things have changed over the last 8 years, as Greg mentioned. Now on all your phones, when you take a picture, it's collecting what's called metadata. It's taking what time was it, where was the location. So like, here's my real iPhone. You probably won't be able to see this, but this is like a real picture on an iPhone. It's got all this white is metadata. So these are little things that it stores related to what this photo, and that's what it's doing, is looking at the photo's metadata and pulling the location out of it.
Your phone automatically stores the location when you take any pictures.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That's
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you
okay,
hit
got it.
hit the properties.
Only if we have it enabled.
Yep. And if you don't,
And if you don't, they show what you can do manually.
just manually tag it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, based on a variety of factors, this is going to get routed to someone. And to Greg's point, we're going to be looking at the county's GIS. And we might say, oh, it's a pothole, but it's on this road, which is actually managed by an outside agency. So we're going to automatically close the request, tell the resident it's done by that agency, and forward that information along to said agency so they can maybe get started on it. Or it's like, hey, this is a CDD issue, it goes there. Or so there's all these different variables that can play into the routing, but eventually it's going to land on a staff member, and they're going to get an email from the software telling them, hey, you've been assigned a new request, and it'll tell us the type and where it's located and show me the photos, and has a link that says click here to access. And that will take us into the staff part of the software. Again, completely web-based. It's the same thing I sent out that message from earlier, just a different area of the software. Our system does a lot, but it's very easy to use. There's really only 2 screens for the average user to learn. One of them is what you're looking at here, which is a list of open issues. Now, which issues I see, again, are very much dependent on my role as an employee. As we covered just a couple of minutes ago, it's very much a rights or permissions-based system. So depending on who I am, I might sign in and see the open issues assigned to me. If I'm on a manager level, I might see open issues for a bunch of employees. I don't know how you're set up, but if there's someone that oversees all of your boards, they want to sign in and see all the open issues across all the departments, they could see that as well. You might also notice these due dates next to each item. These are based on a service level goal that you're able to set internally to give you some sort of time measurement for if these items are taking longer or shorter than you'd like them to. So for example, you might say potholes should take us no more than 10 days. And then that's what the due date would be set at. And then as it's coming due, we can send reminder emails to your staff in increments of days as it's coming due. We could build out what you call escalations in a custom way, where if something goes X number of days overdue, it notifies the assignee again. More days than that, it bubbles up to a manager. More days than that, it somehow makes its way to, everyone sitting on the board today. So different ways we can make the information come to you based on your criteria. All right.
So just to pause on that for a second. So and again, I don't know from a CROA perspective, I know from ours. So for example, Tom is I was saying before, our maintenance guy. So he's the liaison for all things kind of daily operations and maintenance. What they can set on here was, hey, if for example, a pothole is a 10-day alert that, hey, staff has 10 days to fix this. On day 11, we could set it up where Brett would get a notification, Russ's boss, of, hey, listen, staff didn't handle this in 10 days, just sending you a notice. And then, hey, at day 15, Angel gets a notice. And then, hey, at day 20, Tom gets a notice that, hey, this is progressively not getting addressed, that it becomes an escalation. And that, Kevin, is that limited? I mean, can you do that with 1 tier, 2 tiers? Is it unlimited? How does that work?
As far as you'd like to go. You want to get to 100 days and 100 people, you could certainly do that.
I have a question building on that question. Does all these communications, do they leave an audit trail so you can see the initial request, the response to that somebody was going to show up, nobody showed up, an additional round of communications? Does it keep all of that?
Every ticket, sir, is an extremely detailed audit trail, including all the automatic emails and things that are sent when the item was received, all with date, time, and user stamps. And that's what you're looking at here, albeit a very short one because not much has happened. The 2 things that have happened are logged here in this audit trail.
Gary?
With all the myriad of issues and different tickets, how does the software route it to the appropriate entity, CROA or CCDD?
Based on criteria, sir, that is defined by the staff that we'd work with to implement this. So it could be topic-based to start with, i.e., hey, CROA handles tall grass, the CDD handles road issues. Or it could be much more complicated than that. It could be, hey, we both handle those types of issues, but the location of the issue, has something to do with that. And, if the county's GIS has defined in there, in your addresses, something to differentiate which entity handles which things, it could say, oh, potholes from all the addresses originating in this area go to, CDD, while the potholes originating in addresses from this area go to the CRA. Again, that is dependent on that GIS having those things defined in there.
Because we have landscape issues that belong to CDD, and we also have landscape issues that are CROA owned. So grass, trees, things like that can be both. Sounds like there's got to be a huge database in the background that's parsing all this out, and that's our responsibility.
Well, no, that's where he's saying the county GIS piece. That's
but somebody has
boundaries.
Tell that this part belongs to CROA.
No, that comes from county GIS. County GIS has every parcel.
Is it right?
Is it correct?
Yeah.
Just asking.
It has, yeah. Even if it's wrong, it's right.
I mean, the county GIS ties to property appraisers. So if for example, if the county property appraiser showed that we own this building and not CROA, we would know because all of a sudden I'm gonna get a tax bill for this building. So I mean, it's gonna become apparent what's wrong and what's
Can
right.
I give you a subtle example? Because we keep talking about potholes and no one at either of these tables deals with potholes. So a practical example is you have an irrigation control device that's leaking. And in fact, it might be on my property, but it really gets serviced by Enterprise, which I don't hear anyone talking about. But it's also a service area, so that's CROA. And maybe it's also CDD for reasons because it goes under a sidewalk and it may have had something to do with the sidewalk damaging it. It's not so simple that it just automatically can say, because what it's going to automatically say is that the irrigation control box that broke my next door neighbor's house a couple of days ago belongs to him.
But the resident's not
And it
gonna know
does
that it's an irrigation control box out. The resident's gonna say sprinklers aren't working in this area.
No, actually, I'm giving you an actual experience of it was flowing out into the street and he put on cell service that was happening. And the first people that came out were the landscapers from CROA who said that's CDD, actually it was Enterprise. Enterprise came out and repaired it. Then the landscape people had to come back and backfill it. It was a 3 or 4 different operation and none of the responsible persons were the landowner, my next door neighbor, because it just happens to be sitting on his land. It's not his device and it's not his pipe. So
But I think what I'm
we're not talking about, we're not really talking about fixing potholes here. Most of
what
what
I'm saying is
are pretty subtle.
what he's saying is you can put conditionals on there. So Kevin, so
If
as
I
an,
may,
yeah,
if
go
I
ahead.
may, Greg, so sir, like your point is well taken. No one's saying this will be perfect 1000% of the time, but the general idea is where we can, if we can remove human intervention to know where issues go, so that we can free up time for staff to manually deal with something like you just described, where at the end of the day, you do need multiple parties involved. That's what it's going to attempt to do. But I don't think there's a world when you have an organization like you have set up, where you have multiple entities essentially managing the same sets of property, where you're never going to have like, oh, it went to one, but it really maybe should have went to the other. But because they'll all be in the same system, you could easily reassign this ticket. So if I knew, hey, this is actually supposed to be done by Joe, he's from the CROA, I could easily reassign this to him and send it over. So I don't know that it will always be perfect, just because, again, you do have so much overlap. But if we can get it automated by technology a large majority of the time, that would be great. But I think, sir, your point is well taken. Like nothing will maybe get everything all of the time. And that's just, kind of the reality, I guess, of how things work.
Well, it also sounds like we could set a condition, so if it's a townhome in this block, we say notify CROA first. Correct. So our service area manager would then deal with it and then loop in CDD or ECDD as needed.
And that's what I was gonna ask, Kevin, can you talk a little bit about the conditionals? So if the primary is, say, the GIS map, that, hey, we're gonna go with the property owner, but then the conditional is the Paul's point, hey, if it's a sprinkler system that, as Lauren was saying, if all sprinklers end up going to CROA to begin with, or can you talk a little bit about how those conditionals work and how they tier out?
Well, it can kind of work however you want. Like we could take fixed variables that exist and write rules around them. So you might say, for example, all sprinklers go to CROA, all sprinkler issues go to CROA. However, we could write a rule that says if the topic is sprinkler issue, and when it checks the address, say the GIS has defined for that address something called, home type, and it's townhome versus, multifamily house or whatever. You might say sprinkler issues from an address that the GIS identifies as a townhome go to the CROA, but sprinkler issues from an address that the GIS identifies as a multifamily home go to the CDD or something like that. That's how they work. We can't create conditions, if that makes sense. We can take known variables for predictable situations that you have and make it so that it checks those things, and that's what defines, where it goes to. But again, I just like to keep caveating so I'm not misrepresenting. Those things need to live in that GIS, so they have to have those things defined for, all of these given addresses.
Oh, we have another question, Kevin. Smithy?
So I've got a example of something that happened to me recently. So 16 days ago, I walked by what we call Founders Park and noticed that the obelisks don't light up anymore. So I'm standing there, the obelisks, the lights don't light. So I stand there and take a picture, I submit it, but then I didn't know who to submit it to. Is it landscaping? There wasn't an electrical on there, who was it? So I just put landscape. So, they send me a little ticket that says that the number's there, yada, yada. I never got any response after that. I looked it up, you couldn't find it on Seller Service. So I'm so glad you have the history on yours. But how does that work if someone like me submits something, but they don't know where it goes to? Is there a general box?
Well, it's going to go somewhere because by nature, every topic when it's set up has what's called the default assignee. So that's going to someone. What you're describing, sir, sounds a little bit more of a people issue, which means it went to someone and they didn't respond to it and or didn't forward it along to the right place. So there's always going to be human gaps that can exist within a software as well.
And then two more questions to that. Is there like when I go to Domino's Pizza and order a pizza or any of the pizza places, there's a progress bar that says like pizza in the oven, pizza on the way, done in 15 minutes. Is there some kind of progress bar that says, besides your ticket was submitted and it's finished, is there someone that says like, your ticket was submitted, it's going to be worked on this day, it's done? How does that progress work? And then the last question is, I'll give you an example. Tonight, I didn't bring my ID for the town. Is there any kind of near field communications built in like an Apple Wallet where we could put our CROA ID in
No.
and then use it to click on like all the gates and off our phone and just walk into the park?
No, no to the last one. That's just not in our wheelhouse of what we do.
That would be super cool.
Yeah.
Sure. To your question, sir, about the progress, a couple of different things. So if you had submitted it through the app in your track requests area, again, you will get the most recent status and some commentary here. I'm going to add to this, so just hold on a sec. Also, in the email, one of the things that we do include, so like when you submit it even through the app, you're also going to get an email confirmation of your submission. For a lot of folks, one of the things that they do is include a general response time for how long these things will take based on the service goal.
Okay.
So give you some sort of expectation. And I'd like to kind of keep this going. So on the actual ticket that the staff is working, I'll skip a little forward here and then we'll backtrack. They're going to be able to create whatever statuses that they want, sir. So they can sort the work and push it through, right? Something's received, maybe it's, scheduled to be worked on and so on and so forth. And one of the things we could do is write rules to make automated updates go to you as a resident as the staff is pushing it through their work. So for example, I have a status here called scheduled. Just means, hey, this issue is scheduled to be worked on. And when I set this to that and save it, if you look on the phone, I got a push alert through what would be the Seller Service app telling me, hey, there's a message for you about the tall grass issue that you sent in back on April 19th. And when I open it, it pulls me back to the open issue screen, now updating me with this status of scheduled. And then at the bottom is a nice customized message from the department. Kind of essentially, it's a pre-canned message in this case, but giving a good overview of, hey, letting you know, hey, this item's been scheduled. We'll update you when it's complete. Thanks for et cetera, et cetera. So we are able, sir, to do updates via push alert and email to you as the resident based on the status getting changed on the staff side, which is essentially them pushing it through that progress bar that you referenced from Domino's.
Thank you.
So Greg,
Can we let him keep going? I just want to have him get through the rest of this so we can outline questions. We keep breaking up his flow. Kevin, can you finish out what you got here? Then we can.
Sure. Some other things we collect here, which is nice, is the customer information. We do develop a nice customer service history. So here are all the other items this resident ever submitted with us. If we ever are on the phone together, we need to go back and reference these. We can open those up. We also do a quick service history by location. So at the address where this issue was reported, I can see all the other items we ever worked on there. It's great for kind of like quick trend spotting. Maybe I didn't realize we've done so many sprinkler issues here in the last couple of weeks. We need to, start a bigger investigation or a project into it or whatever it happens to be. We went over the statuses. Then you also have like ad hoc messaging. If I had a question for the customer that sent this in, I can ask them right down here. So at the bottom of the screen is where I'm typing, and I could type out this message and hit send to customer. And that will go to them via email and or push alert, to which they could either A, just reply to the email, or B, if they're using the app, they'll be able to write back to you right through the app. They could say, sure, or whatever it is that they need to say. The convo is threaded for just the requester and the staff to see here in the app. And then it's also threaded on the staff side at the bottom, all with date, time, and user stamps. So your green is indicating a staff to resident or resident back to staff communication. I can also message with staff. So if I had to collaborate with a coworker on this, I could hit send to employee and grab a user or a group of users out of the list and send them a message. That will actually go to them in an email. them and I can just reply back and forth in that email thread, and the system will pick that up and log it all here in this yellow color with date, time, and user stamps. And then lastly, I can leave some notes. So if I had notes for myself or for anyone else, I can leave those here in this gray color. Okay, so these are internal notes. Eventually, we're going to be done working on this item, and there's a section called reads and close, and it's text to go to the resident to tell them why we're considering this closed out. And you could freeform type your responses each time, but more commonly, our customers will create these canned responses, ones that you can reuse, for, very topic specific or very general, where when it'll pop in a blurb of text for me. And when I hit update and exit, will not only close the item out, but would also send us this push alert, hey, the issue you submitted and an email about this has been closed. A big green tag here showing us the status of closed, a check mark that says resolution with some text underneath there explaining to them why it's considered closed out. Also, it's sent at the same time an email summarizing the same information. And if you'd like, we can have these customer service experience surveys in your emails, for your closed issues, if that's something that you wanted to get into.
And the organizations could preset those based on type. So if it was a light issue, it'd be 2 questions on, hey, did the light get resolved in time? And is it a bright enough light? Or if it was a road issue, hey, did we fix the road fast enough or whatever?
Actually, these are fixed. It's just a general employee effectiveness, time to respond, and employee courtesy, but there is an open text field on here for the resident to give any sort of general feedback. These actually are fixed in terms of what questions there are.
Okay. But can we modify the questions?
No, that's what I'm saying. There is an open text field to type what you like, but this survey is just a very general survey for these 3 items with like a couple of ratings: superior, good, average, below average, and poor.
Got it. And then one other question, I think, to what Smithy was asking before. So if a ticket routes to the wrong spot, hey, we get 90% of them right, but hey, in the 10%, the GIS map caught it wrong or whatever else. Are these able to, right now, we have a challenge in a seller because if the ticket goes to the wrong place, it'll close. There's not a way to reroute. Are you able to?
So let's say this went to me and Jeff, it was supposed to go to you. I could just go ahead and start typing your name in here. And I have you as a user, and then I'm like, oh, this goes to Jeff, and it says there's a department next to it, and I can go ahead and hit save. And once I save this, it's going to be as if it was submitted to that person from the resident. They're going to get the email to the staff member. You've been assigned a new request, tells them what it is, gives them a link, so it can be worked by the proper department.
I think there is a way for seller service to reroute, isn't there, Lauren? Who does it?
The staff member, you reassign it to people, like I just reassigned Smithy's thing to.
I saw it, thank you.
But if, as I understood it, Angel, isn't it, if CROA assigns it to us, and there's been a couple where it wasn't us, it was Enterprise or whatever, we can't kick it back.
We haven't been able to.
We can't send it back. They have to.
We don't have that capability unless we're missing something, which is a possibility, but we haven't been able.
Well, it could be a permissions on only change.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead.
Also, like one of the things we talked about last time, if you guys wanted to get into it, we do have this like called work order section that we can enable on these tickets, which, like for example, to repair a sprinkler line, it might be a multi-step process. So like we can make it so one of those comes in, it presets up the tasks that go into that, and these could be assigned to your specific employees. And if you'd like, we can enter labor rates in so we can get a time cost for this job once the tasks are completed. We can also enter in all your materials and start to get a material cost for this job, and then get an overall total job cost as well. If you wanted to, you don't have to, but if you wanted to start getting some dollar costing on the issues, you'd be able to do that there.
And then that exports to staff that they can pull, hey, out of all the tickets in the month of March, show me the total dollar amount we spent on irrigation versus trees versus.
Exactly. That's all done here in the reporting tool, which is very, very, very flexible. It has all of your GIS variables, all your custom fields, your time and material information, where like I could say like, let's see if I have anything. Here's like my work order cost for like my sidewalk repair. I set up a report just to see how much I'm spending on repairing sidewalks. And so here are all the sidewalks I worked within a given timeline. It's just an example of an issue type. And then with my costing, and then I'm getting totals here at the bottom. So I spent $269 on sidewalk repair labor, $345 on sidewalk repair material, for a total of $614.25 of sidewalk issues.
Thanks.
I have some other questions on reports. Report with systems like this, and they can be very useful sometimes in management reports. So in other words, I might run a report, give me all the plumbing ones, give me all the landscaping ones, so I can see whether I'm staffed correctly in skills. In the same token, I could run one, give me all the work order production by worker to see who's doing the work, to make sure that everybody's being equally productive. Sometimes I can get a report that gives me average work order completion in days or hours or whatever it is. And of course, what you already mentioned about time and materials per work. Again, that's another way of doing it. So how flexible is to get that kind of thing out of it, and other reports as well?
Very flexible. So like I said, you have all your standard fields, sir, that you can factor into your reports, any custom fields we work with you to add, any of those GIS variables. We also do things like the dates things were closed, the dates things were entered, the dates things were last updated. So if you want to see, show me all of Kevin's items that haven't been updated, in the last month, or longer than that, we could do something like that. The dates things were expected to be closed, customer information, so your residents, all things reported by a certain individual, all things worked by a specific employee, your time, your material, all of these things, sir, are things that you can use as filters to create a report that would get you the type of information that you're looking for. So for example, if you want to see for all of last year or whatever, I'll just use that as an example, all of the items that were, say like landscaping related, that were worked by Kevin. I'll just pick on myself here. I could easily, it's like a bit of a performance report. I could pull something like that up. And this is like just kind of some standard information that comes back. For any report you create, sir, they can be saved so you can use them again. They could all be scheduled. Hey, deliver this report to my inbox with some frequency because this information is important to me. These can all be exported to Excel, or we have all of these different output templates that we have here. We can create custom ones, or you could even take these and say, show me this represented visually on a map with pin markers, because maybe sometimes like a clustering or lack of clustering would be able to help tell you a story. So we pride ourselves, sir, in having a lot of flexibility in the reports. For most cases, if it doesn't exist already, it's something we're able to add to it to accommodate if you need. Like we, from time to time, will add like some custom report output templates for our customers to get them what they need. As long as it's something that's available in the database, it's something that we can help you produce.
So let me pull on that a little bit. So you mentioned like time is taking for staff to deal with something. So I know that one of the aspects of this is staff will have to have tablets to go with them that they're actually entering, they're pulling information, they're entering information. So Kevin, if I got one of my guys is going to go out and he's going to go fix a light pole, and he says, okay, I'm opening this ticket, I'm not going out to fix the light pole. And then half an hour later, he says, I'm done fixing the light pole, and he closes the ticket and says, I'm done on it. Is the system actually able to record, hey, our guy just spent a half hour fixing this light pole, and then cumulatively say, hey, this year we spent 500 man hours fixing light poles?
Depends how you want to go about that. Like, for example, if he just created a whole new ticket, we could do the time to, open to close to get you an hours count, and we could tally something like that up. If it was an already open one and you're using the task, it's not going to factor like the cost in. That's like a little bit of a different function, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But it will capture, because we're capturing in our database the time this was open and the time it gets closed out, all in the audit trail. So we could certainly, like you said, if you want to do it by employee and have a report that tallies that up, we could do that. For the thing I was showing you here, where we have the cost associated with it, that is entering how long they spent. Like, so if like they weren't doing this whole item, they were just doing the one task for this item, and they did an hour, like that's where we could tally up and get the costs related to their labor.
That is important.
Yeah, except that materials costs would be a little dicey, because I wouldn't expect the guy doing the work to know what the thing costs.
Well, no, but I think what you can do, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, if we're going to say, hey, a sprinkler head costs $50 and a light bulb costs $20 or whatever else, the system can track then, hey, because you replaced 50 light bulbs this year, therefore you spent $1,000 on light bulbs.
So basically default pricing.
Because I've done these, right, drill down to the actual part, which ties into the inventory. It's got the real neat factor, but actually managing it is a big pain.
This isn't going to do inventory management for us, but it'll at least show you the costing piece for a budgeting of, hey, what you're actually using.
all the materials that we enter with you guys, it's going to look for a unit of measurement and what the unit price is. So like asphalt is 5 a ton, it's $51 a ton. So if I use 2 tons, you know, then it's going to give me the cost for that, right? So to your point, if it's a sprinkler head, the most recent price, it's like the unit, unit cost is just like, it's a whole unit, and how they cost $49 now. Every time you put one in, it'll charge it $49. So for every material, we will put like a base unit cost. That could be like, again, depending on what the material is, tons, feet, yards, whatever it happens to be.
So actually on the labor, you could actually do that as a workaround, just treat labor as its material and say, hey, a minute of my field guy's time is worth $1. And then how many minutes? 30 minutes, and spits it out like it's
just as soon as you get involved with materials, even generalized materials, you have to have a database to look to, and then it needs to be updated because they keep changing value. And that becomes very labor intensive.
Will some inventory management have a way to generate that price based upon FIFO, LIFO, or LIFO?
We don't do any of that currently, sir, but you're correct.
And I get that, but somewhere along the line, speaking widgets, which is a contemporary business term, it costs 50 cents this week, and next week it costs 70 cents.
Staff is going to have to keep up with how much you want to get into the detail of that.
Yeah.
Of tracking.
Somewhere,
Yeah.
even for the roughest, it needs to have a place to draw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. I think we only have a half hour left, and we have another full agenda item. Or at least I have a half hour left. This product has a lot of functions and capabilities, but I want to go back to something Bill said, I think over an hour ago. What is it that we want? Or what is it that we want, and what are the respective advantages and disadvantages of different systems? I mean, you alluded to that, maybe you didn't.
Yeah, just a little matrix.
Yeah, kind of a matrix. So from CROA's perspective and from CCDD's perspective, on the front end and the back end, what do we want? And what do we want the system to do? And then the other question is, how does this interface with our other existing respective organizations, existing and potential systems before we move forward? So I don't know if we're going to get to those sort of questions, or if that's further examination or reflection by respective organizations before I would come to any decision.
What kind of other systems? What kind of other systems would you be wanting to innovate?
Some of what, like Bill was just getting to, whether we want to have a system that links to inventory management.
So Kevin, do you do yours would do like a CSV or an Excel data export that could be imported into an inventory management system if CROA bought a separate platform?
If you wanted to pull any data you collect out of here, and you could all go into an Excel export to be consumed by something else if you'd like, sure.
I think one example that might fit David's scenario here is, so somebody submits a work order that turns out to be a playground, which would be, kind of Parks and Rec, kind of, whatever. And that generates a work order in this system. But then we also have in-house a work system order, right? A work order system. So there's duplication there, but we don't have to use necessarily everything that they have.
Yeah, the capabilities.
Or if theirs is better, easier, takes some, then we could select that, right? It's a menu driven thing.
I think the simple way of asking this question is does GoGov have an open API?
No, we have some API calls documented. That we're the ones that we have, we're willing to share at no cost, sure. But we might not have a specific one depending on what you wanted to do with it.
What data is accessible through the API currently?
Well, it's not necessarily data accessible through the APIs. They're typically actions and functions, creating a new request, polling a third-party system for a request status. So we'd have to have almost a separate call to dig.
Okay, so you have it on the function level as opposed to on the data level, correct?
Currently, correct. We're not API pulling the reporting tool at the moment. Most of that's done with import export. If I might just add in though, I think one thing Greg is trying to get in front of, no longer supporting is a software term for your software that you have right now is dead on the vine. And the question is are you going to get out and replace it while you have time and overlap and comfort to make that decision? Or one day you're going to come in and the app is no longer available in the App Store and Excel is not going to fix it because they've already told you that they're not. and then you're in a panic mode. So it is just something to consider. Not that they have to make a decision here tonight, but I think from talking to Greg, like I've been in the software game for quite a while now. It's a polite way of telling their customers, like, we literally have no resources to support or develop this anymore. And I have a bit of inside knowledge there. I used to actually work for Excella some years ago. I've only worked at 2 places my whole career. They bought a company, actually sold the software you use currently. It has been quite some years since they've had someone to be able to make modifications and changes. So it is just something to consider. It sounds like you're getting at least 200 tickets a month through there, plus whatever gets manually entered. So like there could come a day, it could wake up and it's just not available. So it is just something to chew on. They're kind of politely telling you what you have is going away. And it's just a matter of you get the selection first to move away from it, or you're forced in a rushed position to have to make that kind of choice.
Speaking more to that, what is your current schedule of feature upgrade deliveries?
Yeah, we don't have a set schedule. We have a full development team. We do have 4 full-time product modules here at GoGov. You saw 2 of them today. We work on stuff in a rotation. We rotate through the products throughout the year. We do customer requests to add features and functions as well. But our company is in an active growth mode. The product that you use was a smaller company called Public Stuff, bought by Excella, and then Excella's main business is something very much different. Whereas like this is like our flagship and staple product module. So this is like what our company is based on growing off of, and what most of our revenue is tied to this product module.
In terms of the differences, specifically from a resident perspective, I think we kind of rushed through that just because we keep interrupting you. Sorry about that, but we need to ask these questions. Is the push notification on change of status to residents? That's kind of as opposed to them having to go in and keep checking. I kind of think that's a big differentiator personally.
If you think about it, sir, it's how your whole life functions now. If I order a package on Amazon, it tells me that the order was received. It tells me that it's been shipped. It tells me it's out for delivery. It tells me it's delivered, right? So it's very much more in line with, I think, how we all interact with these types of things currently. So I appreciate that commentary.
So Bill and David, your question, that's kind of what I was trying to get at to being the layman here. On my slides 8 and 9, I think, where I put the 2 GoGov community communications and trouble tickets, I was trying to put in there things which are either not features that I see in a cell, and again, it could be wrong, but as I understand the cell, aren't in the platform today, or are in the platform but don't operate, at least from a CDD perspective, to the way or fashion we would need them to operate, or don't operate as well as what GoGov is offering.
Okay.
So it's not in a matrix format, but I mean, for me, just one guy's opinion, certainly anybody else on our side who listened to the call. I mean, the big thing for us, we're in a little bit different position than you as far as the community interaction piece. You guys have email lists, you've got more people on your Facebook page and some of the ways you distribute information. We've only really begun to, I mean, it's historically up until the past year, anytime we needed to get something out to the community, it was Angel emailing Lauren and saying, hey, can you send out an email blast for us? I appreciate it. I love it. And I really want to get away from that. I'd love for us to be able to do that on our own. We don't maintain email lists, but certainly to the extent we can get it through, whether it's social media or phone pushes or something, the communication piece is a big part for me. The trouble ticketing part, I think the ability for automation to get at hopefully most of the tickets through a GIS interface is important. As you said before, nothing's going to be perfect. I do like the reporting aspects of it, that I can tie it back to budgets at the start. Again, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, to the extent you want to sit there and maintain the cost of a sprinkler head today, what's the cost of a light bulb today. A lot of the stuff that we deal with on our side are very repeatable things, light poles, sidewalk panels, things like that. That I think they're not going to get me to the penny, but they're going to show me some good trending with where we're at against our budget.
Craig, let me ask you, there's probably a few more questions from the boards on this product. I see a resident raising a hand. What I'd like to do is ask you, Gary, to hold your question because it is 7:30 already. So, I mean, if that's okay with everybody.
We do have a question online.
Okay.
Only he can answer.
Yeah, and he's actually been here for a while with his hand up.
Are you folks tied to 8 o'clock? Because I don't know that we're going to finish.
I'm not here. Okay.
Right,
Have you ever been to a CCDD meeting?
once,
Okay. No, they're not tied.
that's enough. Okay, Gary, real quick, and then we have one online, and then, oh, I'm sorry.
For a long time.
Okay. Was that Tom?
Mr. Hole?
Oh, hi, Tom.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So at the risk of being redundant with a question, because it wasn't clear to me as to what the answer was. Strictly looking at this from a CROA perspective, when a resident wants to report an issue, does the list of items that he can report have to be predefined, or is there an option for a report on an other item, something that is not present in the list?
Like general.
That would be up to, we could each, if you guys want to have an option for other or general in there, that would be up to the folks on the staff side that help us configure the system.
Okay, so it seems to me that unless we have enough foresight to anticipate every potential issue, we would need a general or an other option to report. Then what happens with those items that are outside the domain of either of these two bodies? And at the risk of being laughed at, I'll raise it again as a former IT guy for CROA mentioned, roadkill. Somebody wants to report roadkill, and it happens quite often here in Celebration. My understanding is that it doesn't belong to either of these two entities. What happens with that report?
Does someone, sir, does roadkill always get worked by the same third-party entity?
Well, my understanding is it goes to county. Greg can help on that.
So you have two options. Well, my first question is always, what do you do now? Because at a very minimum, what you're proposing here is we can move everything you have set up currently and set it up the exact same way in our system. So like, you're not going to be losing anything. Okay. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel on the config, but we think we could add some logic. But sir, to your point, let's say, because you don't do roadkill, that's not a topic for you guys, right? And other is just going to get auto assigned to someone on one of the staffs to review it, because that's the idea of another. It requires a manual intervention, right? And what they're able to do then is, look it over and determine who it should go, if it's what agency it's worked by, and forward it along, and then close it at the request out, and tell the resident, hey, this is handled by XYZ agency, and we forwarded their information along. And for the staff, we can even add a little button that says like send to county. And it could like pre-package up the info that the resident sent in and at least email it off to someone. It's not going to be tracked or anything, but at least could like give a head start in automating, sending it over that way.
Okay, thank you.
Assuming that's what's happening today, and other, it just defaults to your staff, and then you guys look at it and say, let's go to the enterprise.
Could you put in a CDD other and CROA other?
I don't know.
But then you're relying on the resident to know which one handles which issue. Again, totally up to you, but that would be your call. What do you do right now in the current system?
It just defaults to CROA's admin, and then CROA's admin has to do a little bit of investigating and figure out who owns it. So we probably stay with the same methodology, just default this to.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to say here is like, where it's like the brain wants to say new system, new everything, but really it doesn't have to be that. What we're trying to do is get the agencies off of something that's dying on the vine, give a very similar replacement. It's not a new learning curve for the resident, functions in very much the same way, and see if we can sprinkle in some automation for the staff and some cool features, for the residents along the way. Just a kind of shift of thinking of maybe how to think about this.
I have a question on the integration. How much work of the user interface and the integration of the switchover is done by you and your company, and how much is on us to do?
Well, we do unlimited support and unlimited training. Of course, we can't do it without your feedback, but if you're like, hey, here's our topic, access to your current site, we can duplicate it with very little of your input. So we try to take on as much as we can based on your feedback. We don't say, hey, you could do all this clicking around. We just need to confirm the information that we have for the setup is correct, and then our team will take care of it for you.
So Jared, and that's kind of a good segue. So I've got what I had done was the implementation slide. So I broke it down into the three major elements. So the cost piece, again, Kevin, if I'm wrong on anything, please jump out at me here, but just to kind of accelerate here in the interest of time, the cost piece is fixed. So we pay for the modules, that includes the support, that includes the integration, that includes any training for staff that they do virtually. That's all part of the fixed fee. And that's all at an unlimited basis, however many times we need.
So even initial implementation
is included in the 16.
What about maintenance? if something stops running.
So they,
We pay extra.
they cloud host it, so it's not hosted here. So they have it there, so if some, they,
What is there a labor charge?
no, that's all part of the 16,000, and then any of the updates would come along with Kevin.
Unlimited remote training, unlimited support for the life of working together. We're never charging for any sort of like professional service type of thing. As new features and functions come out, those are all included. It's a true software subscription. Unlimited users, unlimited data storage, unlimited departments. Roll it out as we want to help you roll it out as deep as we can go to make it a useful solution for you.
So what we had talked about the schedule when we first a little bit with Kevin afterwards. So it's gonna be a couple of weeks if we deciding this to go through contract legally and all that stuff. His rough estimate based on kind of what we had described in our first call and some interactions with staff was about 6 to 8 weeks. And that's going to be for them to stand up the app, customize it how we want to do it, where they say, hey, there's different buttons, different things that are going in there. The data integration, they can port over everything from Acela, all the historical data that's been in there for the past 8 years. They can lift and shift all that in there and bring that in. But that's
At no additional charge.
That's part of this.
Can I go back to what Jared said?
Yep.
So they're gonna do as much as possible, but the reality is, in any you know this, in any system that you're gonna use, if you really wanted to fine tune it to a particular workflow that we have, you guys have, or whatever, then staff has to spend the time to go ahead and get it right. They can go ahead and put it initially, but there's gonna be tweaking, there's gonna be all that stuff.
Even just skinning it, like on the app side is a big task. So like, if they're gonna do that, I mean, the answer is great.
Right.
And yes, we're gonna have to do that, but knowing that there's people who do this all day.
Yeah, well, we don't have to spend all that time doing that. That's the ugly part.
Right.
So.
Okay, Kevin, while we still have you on the phone, Gary, you had one quick question, you said?
That was my question with software support, and it came out in the last few minutes.
Okay.
So from a schedule perspective, that's why, knowing that I believe you guys renewed your Acela contract in January? March. Okay.
It actually goes from April to April, right? April 1st to, yeah.
It's not a full year. We have no early out.
That's why I'm, again, I'm the board here, that's why I'm bringing it up now. Because, he's telling 6 to 8 weeks. I work in IT, a lot of us work in IT. Nothing ever takes the scheduled amount of time that it takes, especially when you've got a legacy system with data to integrate. He's going to get in there, he's going to say, didn't know that. And we don't know what to tell him until he gets in there that what's going to be relevant to him that's going to drive that schedule. So I mean, I'm taking 6 to 8, and I'm just thinking, okay, this is really going to be 10 to 12 by the time we really tune dials. Both staffs are happy, or for including enterprise. Also testing is all that kind of stuff. People.
Yeah.
That's why in my mind, as you guys are looking towards, hey, Acela expires in next springtime, I'm looking at, we've realistically got from the time we decide to do this until it's, in my mind, fully implemented, you're probably going to talk a minimum of 4 and along in probably 6 months. So then to really pull the data, make sure it's customized, make sure workflows are going. If we want to take some time, as Tom's saying, hey, let's do it. Pull 50 people out of the community. What do you think? It all depends on how we want to run it. I don't want to have a time constraint where all of a sudden we're 60 days up on the expiration and it becomes an unsuccessful transition because we're trying to jam through this.
Yeah.
Could we have just in the interest of time, because we still have more things to discuss and we have a year left on our contract, can we have discussed this further on in the year instead of tonight? I don't know.
I think what Greg is hinting at is that it's a longer tail, right? To unwind, we need to get in front of this now, at least from a.
Well, I will say, and again, one guy on the CDD board, certainly any of the other board members can speak up. I'm in a position where I'm ready and we have it on our agenda to sign the contract in April. That will be plenty of time. That will take us 2 to 4 weeks to get the contract signed and then to start getting them to do that data integration.
So the fact that you drop off doesn't affect us because we're the ones who are paying for cell service.
As you guys are watching the integration and you're sort of catching up on questions and staff and will this work, will this not work? We start the process of getting this implemented. And at that point, hey, if Lauren wants to come in and see his angels working with Kevin to set this up and, hey, this looks like it's gonna work, it doesn't look like it's gonna work. You can start that process and sort of go and, the agreement, that's why I asked Jan to attend, the agreement between CROA and CDD, that if we're gonna include other parties like CNOA or anybody else, would then come on the back end of that of, okay, we're gonna be fronting the bill for the 16,000. That's contract's gonna be with us and we'll go ahead and pay that. If we decide, hey, CROA makes sense that they want to come into this, then we have a discussion then about how the cost sharing works, what the service level looks like and all that. But for us to get that,
We've had it now.
But them paying for it on.
No, we pay for it all right now.
Do you have any
I can pay for it all.
fiscal responsibility, reciprocity, I should say, to encourage us? Like, we've been paying this for the last 8 years.
so,
We'll have a credit of X or something like that.
so Jan I have an opinion and Jan has told me my opinion's gotta be confined a little bit here. We can't give you anything for free. I will say that as both a resident and a CDD board member, I highly appreciate the fact that CROA has been allowing us to ride for free on this for the past 8 years. So I am not looking, a man's opinion, to say, hey, we want to charge you the whole 16,000. Jan, help me out here with how we define what a fair issue is.
We have to work out some apportionment of the public-private. We can't pay for new private use, so we'd have to look at some proportion, whether it's the amount of calls we expect, just to figure out a fair proportion between the two parties.
So it has to be based in usage, the proportion.
It has to be based on something that's legally defensible as fair.
That was very well said.
Fair as gets going.
Yes.
As it going forward, right?
Correct.
And
So
we can
you
try
can't
to
give us any credit.
We can try to monetize some of that if we have enough data.
So just to clarify, you are gonna go ahead or soon you will have a vote to decide whether to authorize this from a CDD perspective. You would go ahead with or without us. We separate can have the discussions that we've started to have about whether it's appropriate for us and whether it works for us.
Well, in all actuality, it would also need to get kicked up to CJC.
Right.
Acela is really contracted through CJC and not CROA.
So is that then, so you write the master contract, right? I assume, and then what happens? So let's say hypothetically we unwind cell service down the road. How does that then, we decide to move forward? How does that work? Did we then become a party to the?
We would come up with a separate agreement that we would be the primary party to the agreement. We'd have a cost share that you're paying for this percentage of the cost.
Which we're paying for all the costs of cell service now.
Right.
So hopefully it wouldn't be any more than that. You know?
And essentially also then those admin users for CROA that's all CROA.
Right.
We'd be managing the access from this level, but below, that's all you guys.
Right.
Who has access and everything else.
What about the main system administrator?
Because I'm correct. Because
But you don't have an IT staff, do you, in your management company?
Well, really, the only thing we're doing is a main system administrator.
We have a whole IT department in our management.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about here.
But as a main system administrator, all we're doing, Kevin, jump in here, please. All we're doing is we're delegating access. We're just creating the account for you guys. At that point, you're setting up whatever you need to.
We don't manage anything on.
Yeah, so we then have our own, just from like an administrative, we're then working through you to push updates through them, or how would it?
So our own business unit, if you want to think of it, we do our own reports, set our own users.
Call, support yourself, get access to GoGov trainers, just as if, yeah.
So one more question, and then if you're okay, we can go on to the next thing. So you said that your system, we can upload, download, whatever the correct term is, all the information and cell service into your system, correct? Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so can you break it out? So when you do go live, it only sucks in the CCDD stuff and leaves our stuff behind, so we're not left without any data? Yes. Okay.
It's not going to delete.
It's not right. It's getting a copy of the data. They're just going to give us a copy, man.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, it's a simple way to say it, but that's really kind of what it is. Excel is going to copy the data and give it and paste the copy into our inbox, and we're going to copy and paste it into our system, but it still lives in your system. It's not removing it one and putting it another.
Yeah, they're gonna filter that out, obviously, if it just is working for CCDD. They're only gonna.
I just want to make sure we didn't lose anything.
But to the point too, because that question come up before, and I'd ask again this from a public records perspective, because we're a public board, that was one of my questions. Hey, if 3 years from now, we don't like this anymore. I want to make sure we've got access to everything for public records.
Correct.
That is all still our data that we will do a data export. We can then
That
build
is
that.
correct.
Same for you.
Okay, cool.
If you'd like, some customers each year grab a copy. We send a big file with all that year's data. If you wanted to keep it stored locally somewhere, we could do something like that as well if you'd like.
Which is probably the best route we would take, is get it downloaded every year.
Yeah, once a year, get a little database file or a CSV with all your stuff. That's not a problem at all.
Well, Kevin, thank you, and Greg, thank you for doing all this. Are we okay with moving to the next agenda item?
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Kevin, anything else for us, sir?
No, sir. Thank you all so much for your time. And you have my information, Greg. If you have more questions, call me, email me anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
You too.
Thank you.
Greg.
All right. 3C security initiatives. So this one should be hopefully relatively quick. The partnership on the sheriff's detail downtown, we had started that conversation 2 meetings ago, 2 months ago. I think we're 98% there on the language. There was just some clarification going back and forth between the attorneys on that. I think should hopefully in the next couple of days.
Adding the other part of it.
Yes, making sure we got all, so the general idea for the community, we brought this up in our CDD meeting, which is so everybody's aware. Recognizing the downtown area is getting additional foot traffic, there's additional problems that have been acknowledged both for businesses and residents and the public, and all of this is to assign additional details, so CDD will continue to pay 100% the details we have going through the community doing mostly traffic. This is to assign an additional deputy that would work. What we agreed on to start would be Fridays and Saturdays from 7 to 11 to be in the downtown area, recognizing that the downtown area is CDD and CNOA and CROA and Lexington. So really Lexington's actually the third party in this. They agreed to do a 3-way split with this. So we would have it for 8 hours a week to have a sheriff's deputy down there. So the way we had, after we did some back and forths to keep the agreement generalized enough that we can flex that if we, as the 3 participants in the agreement, want to do that. My example I brought up is, hey, we're, right now Friday and Saturday nights may be enough, but maybe when school gets out in the summertime and all that, maybe we want to go to additional nights. And again, that will be a conversation between all 3 parties as to whether or not we want to dial it up, dial it back down. But that we would have a discussion at least once a year. Hey, everybody's budget changes, they go up, they go down, just what the general benchmarks are, so we know that we're signing the amount of staff in line with that.
And you worked out something so the verbiage will include our cap, right?
Has like with any of that.
Okay, good.
So this be a contingent officer? In other words, we have them until he gets a phone call, the supervisor to go somewhere else, or will we have them the whole time?
Terrific question. So I've had this conversation with Angel and the district captain quite a bit. Any of the sheriff's details we're going to pull, understandably, from my former life and being a cop, if they had a perfect example. They had it in the Publix about 3 months ago. One of the sheriffs who was on duty was in the middle of a fight with a guy in the Publix. Well, the problem was they had a detail down here in town and they weren't called. They should be. If something's going on that's a true emergency, yes, they will pull people off the details to go respond to that and come back. The conversation I had with them was, totally understand that should be the way it is. However, how is the crediting working? Hey, we missed that guy for a certain amount of time. The way it is, Angel remind me, is 30 minutes. I think it is up to 30 minutes. There's no credit, but basically anything over 30 minutes, they would prorate the invoice back and say, okay, after 35 minutes, now they're going to take that guy's time off and he was gone, and then just credit that.
But just to be clear, they would leave just to go to someplace else in Celebration or any place in the county?
It has to be the way the captain explained it to me, and this for our details and also for the one downtown. It has to be the on-shift supervisor. So at least the sergeant will call in and say, hey, yeah, this is enough of a situation. I need to pull them out. And it can be anywhere. I mean, if a plane crashes in St. Cloud, they're going to pull people out.
Depends on the nature.
I think,
The nature of law.
I think he also said too, Greg, if they're on detail, which we can clarify on Monday, but and there's a call in Celebration, it's a burglary or what have you, we're not going to get a credit back for that because they're still in the same vicinity.
Understand.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that a little bit because on one hand, I say absolutely, if there's a burglary that's happening 5 blocks down, the last thing I want to do is have a guy who's sitting down here, guarding our rocking chairs, sit there and wait for other people to go in to deal with burglary. On the other hand, I struggle because I don't want the dollars of our 2 boards to supplant what our tax dollars should be doing. So it's a balance. One of the things that we've really been pressing and they're fine tuning is the reporting that Angel's getting and getting it consistent. So when deputies do leave, we understand why and for how long, but also the activities they're doing that we're on. We've got some of the details, most of them are pretty good. But we've had a few in the past where, I showed up for 4 hours. What did you do? We've got other deputies will go out there and they'll tell you every ticket they wrote and every house they checked and all that. So we're trying to get that level of consistency so we know what we're getting for our dollars.
They've been doing a lot in between East One and Waterside.
They've been pulling over a lot.
Oh, yeah.
My concern is not much the finances, is if we've determined we have an issue we need to cover, the highest degree of coverage is what we should be getting.
And there's gonna be a lot of discretion there for the supervisor of the sheriff's office that, hey, if something's happening, we're gonna count it as good judgment to do what they need to do.
I think if we find out.
If it's being abused, then we'll address
I
it.
think, yeah,
Yeah.
if it's abused or we're not getting our services, we have to look around.
That's.
When we look at maybe highway patrol or other services.
And I think that comes a lot through the reporting and start seeing whether or not these reporting. So. Cool. Cameras we'd added on here, Jack, I know you brought it up. Let's go.
Talking about Islandville, down.
Either downtown or.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely need them. I know Mike Nunes is putting cameras down there around Lexington. I think you guys probably need, well, I know we definitely need cameras down there by the lakeside, the Esplanade area. We're getting stuff thrown in the lake all the time. Trash cans from the lake, brand new teak rockers broken apart. So
They have brand new rockers down there?
They're not new rockers.
they're refurbished.
They on sand down. and fixed.
Refurbished, put together, and then torn apart.
Tom's working on that.
What
Field
happens,
disciples.
what happens if we have somebody on film and identify them? Because it's pointless if we don't
Well,
follow
so
up on it.
great point. So one of the things, and again, we need to bring it up on our board because we haven't gotten a specific motion on it yet or a costing on it. I will say one of the things that I've talked with the sheriff's department, they established about 2 years ago, their crime center, which is their headquarters. They're taking camera feeds from every traffic light in the county, every school in the county. They got thousands of camera feeds coming in there. You can do that here as well. And he says it's about an additional $1,000 of a piece of equipment you put on the back end of the camera network stack. And that allows you to feed all of your camera feeds over to the sheriff's department where they can monitor those as well. So I know if we did that hypothetically, that's something I would definitely want to have us look at is that way it's a real time thing. So you're not just coming in. My staff's not here at 2 a.m. and somebody throws a rocket chair in the pond.
If the guy's got 10 screens,
But
somebody's gonna watch them, and that's where things fall
when
apart.
a report comes in, I mean, it's literally like watching a Jason Bourne movie where they can start pulling up, okay, it started here, and they can start doing the camera follow to see, hey, if there was a car, and then they hit the LPR, so they can do that real time if the call comes in.
Well, and the other thing that I think we discussed this in our meetings. The concern isn't just with a rocking chair or a trash can being pushed in the lake. If you read a lot of posts, there's people getting pushed, written over. I mean, there's a lot of possible. It's just a matter of time before people keep pushing the level, and then someone's seriously going to get hurt. And Lexington already purchased that they're going to tie into the system. And this is just a thing where they can go ahead and say, okay, this happened. Okay, we can track. Okay, it's the same people going on, and this is where they can go ahead and start doing that. And I think really the post is that we're not going to just say, hey, don't do that again. I think we want to prosecute. There actually is damages being happening. We spent a lot of money, CROA and CCDD, in Lexington, spent a lot of money for some of the stuff that they put in. We can't spend all this money, thousands of dollars, and then have it damaged. And then it goes back to the homeowner saying, hey, cough it up again. We just can't do that. We got to be responsible and we have to prosecute.
So what's the question on the table tonight? Roland?
I think that the comment from our side was it's something Jack had brought up a couple of months ago. We will probably be looking at in the near future. If there's interest from your side, particularly again in the commonly shared areas, downtown, Island Village and their Esplanade area there, things like that. If there's an interest from your side on partnering on that, you know, again, you get buying power sometimes where, hey, you buy a camera system, you can get more at a cheaper price if you share it. Or if we just do it as two separate entities and we just agree you're gonna do yours, we're gonna do ours, whatever, just.
For years, we've had an increasing cameras in all of our properties that we own. Not all the little parks, but all the major properties we're pretty well outfitted with our properties, pretty well.
Your cameras and your camera system are antiquated and they're actually up for replacement in the reserves this year. Jose has been doing a lot of research on a system that will integrate not only your key scan system, but your cameras as well. And that would be cloud-based. So we're actually looking at replacing all of your cameras and your key scan system.
I think that's helpful because we've been talking internally about strategic planning, and I think that's something, safety and security, obviously is something we need to, I think.
But we'll do that on our property.
Yeah.
Not
Well, the
town
common,
center.
yeah, I mean, that would be.
So just as put an idea, two different thoughts out. One is, it may be helpful if we're talking about antiquated system and updating and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe there's a common system, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe there's a partnership with a common system. Second part is, I would propose that our cameras be only on our properties, that we pay 100% for the CROA properties. Yeah, we don't pay for a camera on the Esplanade or downtown, but it may be a combined system, maybe. So that may be something that gets.
There may be no contractual or financial merging of these two. I think more than anything, it was simply an acknowledgement.
Efficiencies, yeah.
Efficiency can be had and the acknowledgement that we were all.
500 cameras and we only need 200.
Well, and we were all sharing the same issue of whether vandalism,
security,
whatever else.
Security, and then going back to Bill's point, I think accountability.
And wider access of cameras for the sheriff is what they're kind of talking about. And we would own that expense of that system that feeds our camera feeds to them.
If we choose that we want it to.
Correct.
That's a policy decision.
I do think too, so the decision to prosecute, I think we need to get some common position between the boards, in my opinion. I think we're going to prosecute, we're going to be consistent, just as a celebration standard. We're going to, no matter what, I think that's important.
So that may be something we explore, or we talk about exploring.
Dave, I know have you guys considered camera the Island Village yet? Because we have to deal with, that's we have there. Yeah, and we're gonna probably put some more radar cameras out there, way down there.
There's cameras out there already.
You have a lot of drivers that go up down that road.
Whose road is that?
Now. You always ask me that, whose road is that? Okay, I always say the same answer.
That's for
Like, I'm gonna change the answer. I'm not gonna change.
Curbs.
Celia. Celia owns the curbs. Who? County owns the curbs.
Who owns the
They go from the inside of the curb, across the street.
Exactly.
Inside the next curb.
Who owns Bridge? That's what I was curious about. I was curious. Who owns the bridge? The county?
Yeah, county roadway.
The Green Bridge?
That goes in down in the village, the bridge that goes in. They own that, right? Yeah.
Okay. So we're to number 4. Board comments?
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Board comments either? Anything?
Don't go around the horn.
Yep.
Start with Jared.
Jim?
None.
I have none.
If you still blow mine.
But I'm gonna throw one out there, and I realize it's a sensitive topic, so I want to be careful in how I say this.
So you waited to the end.
I absolutely did.
You waited until David left.
I did. I got a touch with this one.
I'm sure you guys will tell them.
Yes. I like that we are collaborating on these things. We had a meeting, David and I actually coordinated it 2 years ago when it first came on CCDD, and we talked about working with, we specifically talked about the technology committee at that point of, hey, how can we do technology better? And sometimes it's us and sometimes it's you, but us being able to leverage the technology that we have as an example for making projects better. I like that we are finding some opportunities of things to work on together. I see that we're starting with some smaller ones and building up to them. One of the things that we have looked at is, and we've been talking about 4 months on our side, is Behind the Island Village K-5 school, there is a strip of land that we own. It was deeded to us through a long and storied process through Mattamy and the school district. We're exploring right now whether or not we could build a civic corridor-ish kind of thing in an athletic area that we decided to do basketball courts or tennis courts or a skate park or whatever else that you go out there. There's some challenges in that because it is over a gas line. So we have some easement questions that need to be answered by the gas company, depending on what we're going to build. There's a whole host of other considerations that we started exploring that. We're not sure yet where we're at. Just starting to see what's in the art of the possible. But that big piece of land strikes me, and we had a board discussion on it, as a great opportunity, both in its location and its size, to do something with it.
What is the size?
It's about 900 feet long by about 150 or 175 feet wide.
2.5 acres?
Say
2.5 acres?
something like that.
I think.
That was good.
How close is it to 4?
I mean, real estate.
How many yards is it to 4?
It's behind the back of the school.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
How
so
close is it to 4?
so you got, there's the school, there's our lot, there's Reedy Creek has the power lines, that's their line that runs exactly the same size, and it's right next to it. So I mean, it's 100 feet, 150 feet.
Is it like when you're at the civic corridor on the church fields and 417 is right there? So it's that
I
close?
mean, if you know where the back of the school
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's on the back of the school. We have started discussions with the county. I will say the county is, to say eager to throw money at this would probably be soft. They are jumping through the hoops to find out ways to throw money at this because they don't have any parks facilities from the county anywhere west of West Edge of Kissimmee.
I saw your map on that.
Because they
That's
can't
very
afford the,
illuminating that.
yeah,
Nothing near here.
and I have been trying tactfully to guilt them into, hey guys, you don't have anything out here. Because it's CDD, it would be public anyway. I realized, like, when you had a conversation with the county a couple years ago about the soccer fields, your private organization's a little bit different. But our commentary with them was, hey, we're CDD, we're public boards, so public access anyway. So we're in, again, very initial discussions with them as whether or not they'd be willing and able to throw money at it. Also discussions with the school because they have limited space there, so whether or not they can, find a way to do some access control for basketball courts or something else that was really what the school said they'd like to have basketball courts. That there'd be some partnership there. So it's preliminary.
But that's like a little. They got rid of the land because it was too close to the road. They couldn't build a school there.
Because it was close to the road, it's because so many gas.
That's why they got rid of the land?
Yeah, because once Mattamy gave them the land, then the school district realized there was gas mains under there that they wouldn't allow them to put a building. It's not really so much a worry about the gas line explodes, it's a worry about access.
Right.
If they need to get
Right.
any maintenance to it. So one of the many questions on our side is, hey, if I were to put a basketball court on top of that, and there's a gas main issue, they have the easement right here to our basketball court, and we'd have to replace that. Now, the odds of that happening, pretty small. But that's gonna be part of the process.
It is very preliminary though, right? Right now,
Very preliminary.
nobody posts we're building anything because we're not.
Right now, this is simply an exploring thing that we're looking to be able to do that. I say that because you all have traditionally done Parks and Rec. This is something that we're looking at that we would do as a partnership potentially with the county, to see whether or not they would come in. I say that in part also because as we're looking at the development potential, I look at what you all are doing currently with the civic corridor and trying to finish building that out. There have been conversations a couple of years ago. I know Brian had approached me a while ago. There's been talks about Stetson and all that. CDD's ability to do bonding. It is to be able to finance large projects in town. That would be a shared operation. So, example, a town hall type of thing. That was one of the things we had started talking about a little bit ago. Was CDD were to do a bond, you guys were to be partners in that and be tenants in that or whatever else. Again, it's been a very initial conversation that we do have that ability. So I'd say as you're looking at things like the civic corridor, as an example, I would be interested as one person on the board, as you guys are looking to build this out, realizing that finances are constrained and how you get finances are constrained. Because you don't have the ability to bond. We do. Your ability to draw loans is more constrained because of the charter. Ours is different. We take public municipal free bond. as you're looking at developing out the corridor, I would be interested in hearing from you of, hey, we've got ideas, we would like to develop things here. I'd like to talk about helping on the financing and partnering on it. Because I realize that's been a big constraint for you to be able to do that. So I'd mentioned as a resident the other night, as an example, a community center. That would be something I would be interested as one board member if you got to a point and said, hey, we really want to look to do a community center. I would like to see us have a conversation between the boards as to how can we help contribute to that from a financing perspective and really do it as a town governance board and not you guys always trying to fight this stuff on your own, because that really seems to be your ability to get money and time quickly enough seems to really constrain your ability to think big projects as opposed to some of the small ones.
So you're offering to help pay to have this turned into a community center?
But you'd have to give us the land.
Yeah,
That's how it works.
Yes.
Yeah, essentially.
In anything we're going to publicly bond, and Jan, please jump out at me here if I'm talking wrong. Anything we're going to bond has to be a public building with public access.
So then our community center that you're gonna help fund, whether here or on the civic corridor, will be open to all Osceola County.
Yes and no.
No, the TDS.
Well, it's not, no, it's not. Because when you say open, that means there's a flood of people coming in.
Right.
There are particular procedures to actually purchase subscriptions for people to actually, maybe subscriptions to wrong word, to actually use that. You know, it's the same, for example, when people want to go ahead and say, okay, well, $25 a month, you have access to that.
Right. Or people from.
Yeah, we can,
You already do have.
we can set reasonable fees for outside
Non-residents.
users.
I'm sorry, Joan, would you repeat, start from the beginning? I'm sorry.
We can set reasonable fees for folks outside of Celebration that aren't paying assessments. So you could have a cost schedule for folks that are coming in that aren't Celebration residents.
But it would have
We
to
do
be
have to make
open
it
to the.
open,
Yes,
but we can charge them for, and again, I'm going to do some completely made up out of the air math. If a community center costs $10 million, and that equates to $100 a year per household of inside Celebration residents. That could then be a logical way that we would say, hey, if you live in St. Cloud and you want to come use our community center, you're open to do that, but you have to pay the $100 a year in order to come do that, as opposed to anybody who is a resident within the district confines would not pay to do that because they're already paying for that through their assessment.
And it would be much higher than $100.
but
Yeah,
that's,
much higher.
Just,
He's simplifying it for me.
Yes.
20%.
It's a municipal rate. I mean, you have to get the bond market, but it's
low.
it's
It's
advantageous for municipal.
Yeah, it's typically set at your highest assessment level. I don't know that we can do that for one building, but that's typically how we do non-resident user fees. Is your highest assessment is what you usually charge for an annual pass to those amenities for non-residents. For a singular building though, I guess we would have to figure that out.
I think Greg's example was good, but whatever charge the residents form would be a good annual charge or a fair annual charge. We go through a rate making process, but that would be something that would be fair, or you could come up with a schedule of rates.
And Dave, I know you said you've done this as a developer and other.
Yeah, I'll just say that, one data point's a data point, but several become a trend, and every development opportunity utilizes CDD municipal bonding in order to finance infrastructure and capital improvements. There's no more HOAs developing any sort of amenities when the CDD can be established to do it.
Guaranteed money.
So you mentioned the civic corridor, right? Would the same offer stand if we wanted to really do a number on this building? And add a couple floor, say expand the back there where we could do a.
If that's necessary, we have to use the building.
Well-
It would have to be a public building.
Well, but I think that would be, I
There's nobody else anymore.
understand, but I think it would be easier my concern about asking you to put a bond on anything on the civic corridor is then that, it's visible, people, whatever, and it would invite people to come in. If we did it, if we floated the bond for this building, then, like you say, there could be a membership, or whatever from somebody outside, we would not be paying rent for the management space or anything like that, right?
Yeah,
you would.
We would be paying rent.
You have to.
Yeah.
Okay, so never mind.
Yeah, we would have to come up with appraised value of the building and then public versus private use. It would be a.
But there's also recognition, if you were to. Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, if you were to turn the building over to us, there's a value inherent to you turning the building over to us.
Like for $1?
Well, no, like, if you were to turn the building over to us, could I then, question to Jan, could I say, hey, there's a value of, make up a number, $1 million in the building, and fair market value of what we're gonna lease them in space is $20,000 a year, therefore they get a credit of $20,000 a year times however many years it gets up to $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, obviously subject to tax lawyers looking at it, but you can come up with whatever the appraised value is and come up with some value that you put in. And then you get that back in whether it's free rent or some other.
But there is an exception though, I think, for this
Sure.
building.
You can also do like-kind exchanges. You can exchange a land swap. So you can take CDD land and exchange it for CROA land.
Although, and
Gets a little
correct me if
weird.
I'm wrong on this one, the 8x1 though is, I would consider an amenity. That might have to go to a community vote if that's.
It would.
Oh, yeah,
It's-
it transfer title.
Right,
Sure.
Yeah.
if you look at lot D and lot B, for example, it's just there. Nothing exists. on
Well,
that
and for an
right now.
example,
But we would be selling it.
well, Lot D, as an example, you could lease us the land for $1 a year for 99 years. And then we get into an agreement to do a community center, which we would bond on top of that. We're just, you continue to be the landowner, so you haven't given us anything. You're just doing it on a lease.
From a charter perspective.
Yeah,
Charter land is.
yeah, I'm not sure a ground lease is.
We
the
can't
way we can structure
able
that.
to get.
Never mind, that's why I brought it
No,
down.
you-
Yeah.
no, no, I think we'd have to own it.
Correct me
We
if
have
I'm
to
wrong,
own the land.
any loan has to go to you.
Yes,
But, okay.
But we did take out a loan to buy this building, just so you know
That's
the
correct.
precedent.
Pay it off.
It is, it was like a 10-year loan, I think the payments were $10,000 a month.
Fine. So what do those loans typically look like? And is it like a 10-year loan? Like what is it? Or 10-year bond? Like what was typically
Usually 30.
Oh, it's
yeah,
usually a 30-year.
30-year bonds.
30 years?
Yeah.
They're usually very large numbers.
Right.
The advantage to, let's say, I'm gonna say the community center and another amenity. Bring it up.
Don't stay in.
Don't use it.
But,
We're gonna call it bacon.
well, no, but let's, but the thing is though, is, yeah, this is gonna be my stump speech for this. Okay. When CROA did the amenity fee that was purchased for every sale of the house. The spirit of that. And why everyone agreed to do this was to go ahead and enhance celebration. Right? Not just the civic corridor, every single village, right? And so there's the master plan in 2010, which some of you, I said it over and over and over again, because I think Jeffrey Mallon really hit it on the spot with this. They're not big things, but they're like pavilions with barbecues, splash pads, there were enhancements that added to it. I think you've seen some of the people that visited Island Village. They said, "Oh, we need to have what they have," which not necessarily because the builder built that, right? But this gives the opportunity for CROA to repair the 8x1, fix some of the maintenance issues that are occurring throughout the community, and start focusing on these little things. Telling you, like in 3 years, you can complete the master plan, and not just being a CCD person. I lived here 2002. And some of these things really rip people apart. Trying to make the right decisions, trying to have other people trying to put these things, this task force, that task force. It's draining. It's just emotionally draining to go ahead and see this. And it's almost like you got to take a step back and how do we go ahead and get from here to here and grow up as a community without all the infighting and thousands of emails and you stink and it's just like, it's exhausting. So this is a possibility, and the master plan too shows the vision to actually complete all that empty space, because once it's done, there's no more land. That's it.
Which empty space?
Lot D and Lot B, right? And then there's also spaces throughout the community and parks. So when Law Sports goes ahead and says, we want to spend $1 million, $1.5 million, or whatever,
you know, the solution was in the master plan. In East Village Pavilion, have a restroom and a storage space, do the extra parking on the grass and call it a day. And that would have been so much less task force, the designs, the engineering report, just throwing away money. It's in that master plan. And I know there've been others after that. But you know, this encompassed everything. You can trade out things whatever you want, depending on the sport of the day or whatever, but it's in there. Without much discussion of the board to go ahead and decide and move in and be done with it already. Well, whatever that master plan is, I mean, you can go to the one that was there, you can update it, whatever else.
Absolutely.
I go back to my comment of, it becomes a challenge that I see is the ability for you to draw enough money to be able to do that. Now you're changing boards and hey, a vision changes, whatever else, as opposed to, hey, if we're gonna bond this and say, these are the things we want to do across the town, sprinkle it on a 30-year bond that's going to be spread out across 30 years so that all residents are paying equally for 30 years on this. Now you can execute a master plan as opposed to this year we're going to build this, and then we're going to talk about 2 years from now, and then we're going to build this, and we're going to talk 3 years from now. My God, I want to do a community center. I got to talk 10 years from now in order for CROA to be able to, the way you draw dues, to be able to build something that would complete out some of the things that we talked about as a town.
Well, and then that multi-purpose building, which would cost $8 million, right? Now costs $20 million. Because we waited all this time, you know, and I bring up the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, if they had just put out $20 million, they would have finished everything, had 2 wings in the church, everything would be done. But they only built the church. Now they're going to open up 1 wing, and it's going to be the same amount of money that built the entire church again. It just financially, it's a loss. Now, I'm gonna say one thing when you talk about the bond. There is a certain point when it's like that's too high to go to residents and say now you're going to spend an extra $400 a month. I wouldn't vote for that, right? But if it's in something that's nominal, it would make sense to finish the big projects and just move on from this. Then CROA can focus on some of those amenities and then maintenance after that, maintenance.
I also think the timing is pretty interesting, especially with Monday. We talked about the guiding principles of the low study. There was one in particular that we left out, which was affirmatively and aggressively embrace strategic partnerships. It's not, we kind of highlighted 8 and it's 15, and I think this is positive. In my opinion, I think that's where we should be.
I mean, historically, it's like it's CROA versus CT. It's in fact movement.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, but everyone pays us, right? All the residents pay us.
Yeah.
Like it becomes how do we work together to get something. Enough much about something.
It's quite a stump speech. I
prepared for it for weeks.
And I'm thinking about what you said about Jeffrey's presentation. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Files.
And I remember, talking about low hanging fruit, and we're gonna go and we're gonna put grills like around your neighborhood over there. We're gonna do, and nothing ever happened with that unless part of it was they added a couple tennis courts and did some stuff to Lakeside. Maybe that was part of it.
That was before that.
Okay, so then we've done nothing.
Because what happened is that, and it's not to blame the CROA board, this is exactly history, right?
Yeah.
It was the fixation of the soccer fields. They went to the soccer fields to go ahead and do it, and that zapped a lot of money out of it. And then after that, every board came up with their own master plan, and it really ignored all of Celebration. If you only fixate on these areas, you got to impact every village because the homeowners are in every single village. They want to see something, and it doesn't have to be grandiose.
Well, they didn't want to see the lawn sports behind Heritage. No, and I'm not going there, I'm just saying. And a lot of people, Charles, do you understand what I'm saying? No,
I'm not saying.
because that was South Village, and like Bill said the other night, we we're gonna have that whole NIMBY effect. They wouldn't have wanted it down East Village either, because all those people.
Hence, that's where they're playing. And if you're only expanding the pavilion and adding a restroom, that's all you're doing. There's no extra fencing.
Right.
We can kick back over 10 by 10 bunch of flowers. That was only just a side thing for butterflies. And all it is you're putting in plants that butterflies like.
Right.
Well,
Somebody would said, "Oh, we don't want that,"
And guys, listen to the
and then
reality.
we're not even paying for it. It was somebody else was paying for it. It's not a CROA.
But the reality is, take that piece to the side, well, take the money piece to the side. No matter what you come up with in a master plan, we could all sit here and we could drop a master plan today and say, this is the best thing ever, and we think we want to build this right now. You're gonna have folks in the community that agree, disagree, whatever else. What I see as the challenge is the added variable of changing boards, changing priorities. COVID hit and you stop building responsibly, you stop building things. Okay, so that's 2 years now that nothing got constructed. Now we're trying to restart that. Now we're going to this. Now with every board that changes out, that master plan, even if you have it developed, is a constant readjustment. And so little gets done over time. You only get market food drills out pavilions or something like that. This provides the opportunity with a partnership to say, hey, if we can truly get buy-in on a master plan, you're gonna get 100%. But if you can get a general community consensus to say, here's what we think we could do, float it against a bond against a reasonable number that we can done.
But
We're not gonna decide tonight, though.
We're not, but this is,
Well, this isn't a board, this isn't a meeting to decide anything.
yes,
It's got elaborated.
yes, ideas. And as you guys are looking at, developing things, that's where I want to make sure, have the vision to know. And I understand Brian Kenzel's comment the other night, hey, a community center, I got the number from, but it's probably not wrong, $8 to $10 million, probably not far off. Well, Ronnie's probably within 10%. I can understand his commentary, hey, if CROA has to go this alone, you keep going half the distance to a wall, do you ever get to the wall?
Wasn't that interesting? Okay.
With that, Tom, you have.
Yeah.
I have no comments.
Mr. Gadd? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, I say that just to say I would encourage you as you're in your own internal deliberations, look at that as a resource. I know as one board member here, I would be encouraged to have you come to us and say, I got a big think idea and I want to figure out how we can help finance. That's it, now I'm done.
And Tom, you said you're done? Jack?
I'm basically done. I agree with what Thomas said. This is something I've looked forward to for umpteen years from being on the board and on CDD, and finally seeing a group that can sit down together and not yell at each other.
Say?
What are you looking at me for?
Well, I know, I'm just saying, you know,
We have to yell at Jack on you.
yeah. David, my dear.
Oh, finally, I get to have my prepared comments. I'm done, thanks.
Nice seeing you. Okay, is there any other business?
Lauren and Angel.
Yes, ladies.
They're done.
Both are key to the process here.
Yes, I got nothing.
Okay, so who wants to adjourn first?
We're gonna adjourn our meeting. You can keep going.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn from the CROA group?
So moved.
Jim, second? Charles, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Motion on ours? There you go.
For Dave, Jack, all in favor, you.
Yeah.
Hey, great.